Canadian bottle.
Yes, yes.
And it was fine. It's just leaking, that's where it is.
Oh, you're
And I haven't got that. My husband's telling me,
That's right.
that was.
That's what my friend was.
But it takes, I guess it gets.
But it irritates too, you know, so. It's.
But you know, nowadays. Everybody wants streets so bad.
Yeah. Always.
Always.
Well, thank you.
That's because you don't give it to some weird glasses.
Hey, what's up, boss?
It's like
Your
yours.
eyes.
I got
I gotta tell you, when I was in so I was just like, I'm just gonna go full glasses.
I had to
So
buy.
you still wear reading glasses. Yeah.
Cheers.
I left 2 bags of rings in the office, if you guys want to take some. Pizza.
You need help?
Go with that. Yeah, I left my, my tree. It was given first.
Oh. Oh.
Oh,
There are 450 billion avocados right now, like little tiny ones. So they're like-
I have a, mine is every.
I was gonna say it alternates.
But it's. Yeah, no, it's not every. Never say no to avocado.
That avocados.
Keep that in mind. I.
Like there.
Somebody understand that.
Oh, me too. It's so weird. It's like, you're like,
They're actually. Because
They were plastic, I believe.
I was not. Artificial.
Whatever it was, it didn't fit.
That's a sign that I had to, I started losing some weight, but
You,
I had to put two of them.
that's in you when you're at someone and say, here, hold it in place.
That's what they put
Or
both
just
of
walk
them together, I
slowly.
gotta help myself. People usually smile this way.
Ready, yes.
Mayor Mitchell. Here. Vice Mayor Senpi.
Here.
Councilwoman Bravo. Here. Councilman Bennett.
Here.
Councilman Vasquez.
Here.
There is a quorum present.
Okay, thank you. Invocation, those that can please stand for invocation by Councilman Bennett.
We asked that this evening, that we be meticulous, in looking over the strategic plan. We hope that it serves us as a North Star and gives us a clear destination so that we can make decisions that change our direction and ensure that we reach our goals as a city.
Everyone, please join us in the pledge of allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. Erica, just so we know, the meeting is being recorded.
Yes, recorded and streamed, live streamed.
And live streamed. So welcome to those of us, those of you that are joining us in the audience, and to anyone that's listening on stream. All right, let's get started with an introduction by our interim city manager on the process. We're meeting here today it's a workshop for a strategic plan to update a previous strategic plan and develop one that's consistent with our goals and objectives going forward.
Certainly, I'm going to read into the record, the letter that you have before you. It's for the objective overall vision for tonight. So for tonight's workshop, we will be discussing the strategic plan that was originally developed by Bill Usitel in January of 2012. I have met with staff, and I believe that we can update this outdated plan, and with the help, obviously, of council as an in-house project. I don't believe that we have to hire another consultant to do this. However, in order to accomplish this, I'd like to ask council to please identify some obtainable goals this evening and some objectives. The recommendations for the goals and objectives should be lists of items within the city's control that we have control over. And for each of the 5 categories, as mentioned in the strategic plan: public safety, economic development, municipal services deliveries, financial management, and communication. Once council has identified their goals and objectives here this evening, I would like to continue to work with staff to develop realistic strategies and initiatives and measurable performances for each of those goals and objectives. It is my intent to have a final draft of the strategic plan ready for our budget workshops so that we may discuss for budgetary consideration any items that need to be funded and or require additional funding in order to accomplish council's goals and objectives. Some may be short goals, while others may be added to our capital improvements over the next 5 years or more. Ideally, our strategic goals should be objectives that we want to achieve at the end of a 3 to 5 year strategic plan. These goals are typically broader than yearly objectives in order to achieve the overall goals, but shorter than those long-term goals like a vision, like it has in a vision statement. So I look forward to just having a productive this evening.
Thank you, Tammy. Okay, so, and I'm open to suggestions as to how everyone feels, but I think we all agree we'd like to quickly do this. This is a very succinct document, and I think the goal is to keep it like that. If we get too much into the weeds, it's hard to, if things change, that's not in our strategic plan, or we're not able to add something, so I think, keeping these very broad goals, but within these broad goals, there's certain outcomes that I think each of us would like to see. So I'm not sure, keep that in mind, as to how we want to, like, if there's a specific, if we have a, well, let's do this first, okay. Under the mission statement, Tammy, this mission statement, where was this? Was this something that this gentleman who was hired to do this created for us, or is this a mission statement that is consistent with somewhere else in the city?
It was basically a mission statement that was
Created for this. Okay, I don't know if y'all have read that. I find the mission statement, our vision for Miami Springs and the core values, kind of, dated and a little, I don't know, we use the word, not as professional as it would be, perhaps. The wording is not as professional or as, efficient as it could be. It's more fluffy, so.
Through the chair,
Yes.
now that we're on core values, I was doing some research amongst other cities,
Well, let's wait, we're not on core values. Let's do mission statement first. I'm still.
Oh, I heard you say core.
Sorry, well, I meant all of this section.
Okay,
But
okay.
as far as the mission statement, how do the others feel about this? I mean, does this seem like mission statement, or is it something that I feel like it just be improved upon a little bit?
What suggestions do you have?
Well, I think improve the city, enhance quality of life, including things like this. We're saying protect the health, safety, and welfare of our residents, property owners, and business owners. But by delivering quality services, but it's not just delivering quality services, and it's not just protecting their health. It's, a vision to make our city bigger, better, and, have to be careful with bigger, sometimes people misunderstand. But, a much better city, not just, I mean, I see this as kind of staying as is. And I don't think that that's our mission statement. So I'm not saying to reword it ourselves right now, because if we get into wordsmithing all of this, we'll be here forever. But I wanted to get a consensus as to, and this would be a direction perhaps for Tammy to send us a draft, or we can send her suggestions of what we'd like to see as a mission statement with components, but to
So I had written that in the mission statement, it should somehow address like augmenting the economic outlook of the city for our residents. Besides just like protecting the health and welfare and safety of our residents, I think I agree with you. That I think that that's a big push for us to,
and improving our quality of life consistently. There's no,
for
we're
sure,
not, it shouldn't be static.
enhancing quality of life.
Okay, so,
Sorry,
yes, sir, no, go ahead.
and you guys have probably done a more strategic plan than I have, to be honest. But at the end of the day, what's the mission statement more about, like, how to get to that future vision? I mean, you can help me in reference to that. I know that part of the vision would be to, to get economically more viable and maybe tackle, our commercial district and so forth. But is the mission more just about how we're gonna get there in a simple way, or maybe, I like.
Yeah, no,
better
I mean,
wording
what
than
you're saying,
that.
I guess what bothers me here is by delivering quality services, and I think, our strategic plan should be more than just the quality, it's having a greater vision for the city. And then it would go in, I'm using the word vision because the next one is vision, but that's not necessarily what I mean. But I think what you said of, providing for the economic vitality of the city, the quality of life, and also what I was going to suggest with this is just that we agree to have it, or if you have suggestions on it.
I think those two things, right, enhancing the quality of life, because I think it puts it on, at the end of the day, that's what we want for our residents. And I think that, I liked your word, I had said economic outlook, but, the economic vitality of our city for the residents. Because that'll cover everything.
Yes, and I think that pretty much is.
For tax base and everything.
I think also we should add, like something transparency, through transparency and and professionalism, we're gonna, you know, provide this to our community.
Good, sure.
I think perhaps transparency would go somewhere else of how we do it. You know what I'm saying, of how we perform that. Yes, sir.
So, yeah, I believe it needs to be worked a little bit, and I agree. Also said about enhancing quality of life. I think the question that you want to answer always with a mission statement is, why do we exist? Why do we exist? As a government, as a city, and I think so, you know, to protect and promote, I would say, health, welfare and so forth, but I think it needs a little bit more words.
And I guess what you said, Councilman, is right on, because it's not just, it definitely protect the health, welfare and safety of our residents, property owners, business owners, and delivering on quality services at a reasonable cost, but it's also providing us to the community.
Yes.
On top of, you know, which is, I think that's what's kind of missing, that sense of, you know, by providing a
That's why I like when you mentioned about enhancing the quality of life.
okay. All right, so, if you all agree, let's just leave it that this will reword, this shouldn't be that complicated to do, and we can either ask Tammy to see what you can do of including that for us, and then we'll review this anyway. I think that's the fastest way than trying each of us right now, you know, on the spur of the moment to come up with it. Okay, so then we go to our vision for Miami Springs, and the way the strategic plan, this one was written is for 5 years, which, look, ideally, a strategic plan should be 5, perhaps 10, and even looking ahead 20. And there's some things that we have to include in there that aren't going to necessarily be included in 5 years, but they should be part of the strategic plan. Case in point was the adaptation plan that was brought up, you know, the resiliency adaptation plan, that we know is an issue. We know something that has to be done. Are we going to be able to complete it in 5 years? No, but we have to start tackling it. So perhaps under our vision, we can have in 5 years, and then in 10 years, and those would be very broad. Of course, other councils will may change them, may whatever, but at least it's what we know right now of where the city should be in 5 years and in 10 years. Does that seem reasonable? I think we can.
So you want to make it 10?
Well, no, I'd say in 5 years, and then we'll list that, and then our vision after that in 10 years, and there may be things that we add in 10 years.
Through the chair,
Yes.
I went through a couple of samples, and I think that I would be interested in kind of like organizing the layout of each title and concept, because a lot of these things, what I was looking at, they're not really bullet points. For example, it's actually much simpler. A vision, for example, Miami Lakes, it's very simple. It says we want Miami Lakes to be the model of friendly, open, innovative, effective, and efficient government for its residents and businesses. And then when you go into the strategic plan, there's an area there where then you would go ahead and maybe do some generalized sample bullet points, because like we're seeing up here, these are ideas, but they're not for sure gonna get executed per se in a certain amount of time. So I do see a trend where they kind of like, they don't really put like a 5-year or a 10-year plan. They kind of concentrate on 2 years per se to make it more realistic, and then visit it as possible, because again, just trying to keep it more simple. And as we go through, I'm gonna share this with Tammy, because I thought they did a really, really good job. And very streamlined it. It was very clear and interactive without being the situation, but the whole bullet points and all that stuff, I haven't, this is the only one that I've seen out there like that. So I'm looking to see if we do this again, if we can maybe restructure it in a more.
I think this would be the time to do it. There's nothing that says, I mean, we're using this as a template because it's what was available. But there's nothing here that, you know, says our vision for Miami Springs can't be, you know, a paragraph with a vision statement, similar to the mission statement and a vision.
Through the chair.
Yes, sir.
So I'm just thinking about this right now. Usually doesn't have to always work. Vision usually comes for the mission, but because of the operation of it, but something to consider. I agree with the council level. The organizing, what you said in the beginning was, you know, the wordsmithing and the rewriting is, I think, should go hand in hand. So usually folks talk about vision, mission, and then some values. Really, provide the staff with develop the operational aspects of this. I understand that Ambulance does a 2-year review or something like that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, they do it like in a 2-year sort of thing.
Review,
Because
Strategic plan.
review and just, well, the strategic plan in general, do it for 2 years.
Right, I think
Yeah,
it's more, maybe,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
maybe George, I'm sorry, but just to give you an example, how simple it is, not really intentional.
I think that this wording is just, it's
So a couple of points. My understanding is that when this was done, when this was prepared, there was like public, public input for, the sentiments that were behind this. I mean, to the extent to which we want to get public input to kind of redo our mission vision, that's something that we need to decide. If Miami Lakes does it every 2 years, I think that this needs to be done at least every year. I think more importantly, the bullet points that represent the initiatives and strategies and then the key indicators and the things that kind of keep you honest, that keep you accountable to working towards what you think your goals are, I think is important. I think that's something you could do once or twice a year, and it shouldn't be too difficult. So, I mean,
we've talked about that,
Yeah.
that we're going to put this as part of it, would
Sure.
be a yearly review of just at least once a year, we dust it off and look at it, and
It's hard to go back 10 years.
right,
Sure,
yes, sir.
if I may.
Well, let
I'm sorry.
Councilman go ahead.
So, yeah, I was just, my point is I read the mission and vision. I agreed with the things we talked about adding to the mission statement. I just think that, these statements tend to be more general, and broad. And I think, if we have any suggestions for things that we just feel like doesn't fit, or if there's something that's been omitted that we think that's important, I think now is the time to put it in. I don't know to what extent we want to go down the rabbit hole of reworking these things. I think that the heaviest lift is gonna be when we take each of these goals, if we have the same structure going forward, taking each of these goals and having staff develop some initiative and strategy, like these are the things that we're gonna do in order to accomplish these objectives that we want to get done. And then this is how we're gonna know and measure and monitor our progress towards achieving those things. That's the tough part. That's the one where we're really gonna have to kind of take each one of these, and be very meticulous.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna take a slightly different position, a couple of things that was said. Number one is I agree with the yearly review. Yes, absolutely. But I think that we should, I thought we were thinking about something. And this is what I think, that we need to put together a plan that's like 3 to 5 years. Because every year you're going to have a review. Every year we're gonna look at things, we'll put the goals together and talk about timelines. Staff, that gives their input. There's gonna be things that are a lot shorter and others that are longer. And the idea of coming together once a year, budget time, whatever, to review it is a way of saying, okay, where are we here? This is gonna be done at this time. This one we know is gonna come where the one that takes a little longer, where this year. But I think if we're gonna go through the exercise, we ought to have a vision of a long period of time. So I would say 3 to 5 years. And at which time it could be like complete. But
I tell you why 5 years I think is reasonable, because no matter what want to accomplish in 2 years, we have projects going on now in the city that were started when I was first on the council. you know, and that's when, you know, we started applying for them and funding them and even got approved for them, but the money, so there's no way, no, it's wonderful when it does happen, let's say that, when it does happen in 2 years, you know, what we decide here we want to do. But those are usually pretty small
Yeah.
items that, you know, yes, we can fund it and we can get it done. If we're talking about long-range goals, for instance, 36th Street, you know, that's not gonna happen, you know, completely in 36th. But hopefully a lot will be done toward that process in 2 years. So I think using a 5-year and a 10-year, because I think it's incumbent on us to not just say, oh, well, you know, that's gonna be further in the future. 10 years will be here in no time, even if we're not here. You know, to list those things out that at least we're aware of now, and they might be very few, might be 2 or 3. And they might be very general, but just to have those on there so that, and if we accomplish it in a year or 2, that's wonderful, you know? Those are things that we've gotten, but 5 years is probably a pretty reasonable amount of time.
Contemplate 2012 for 5 years. Period. So I think that's workable. And we can have an exercise on that too, you know.
And there's going to
Where
be some things
we
that
would
we
like the
need
city to
to.
be. And say, "Okay,
Through the chair, so to piggyback on this conversation, they do have, I'm gonna share this with you, it's really amazing. The city did a 10-year, what you were talking about just now, which is under what's called a background, but then they also do a yearly plan review. So we could do the 10, but with a yearly review, so that way we can,
But the review is different from the goals.
it's a
okay?
measure.
Something that.
Right, the review
Goes to
is
public.
seeing, this is, remember, this is like we've been doing with our project workshop. On a yearly basis, you know, just saying, look, these are the projects that are currently underway, these are the projects that, you know, are about to take place, and these are the projects that, you know, are practically completed or just been completed. And that's a yearly thing, but it's not necessarily the work behind it to get the projects done. It's more, you know, seeing where we are. So I think there's 2 things. One is
There's 2 components to this.
the where we want to be and or what we would like to accomplish in 5 years and what we
And the
would
annual
like to be
update
in,
of
you
what
know,
how
10 years
where we're at.
or approximately 10 years. And then the yearly review where, and you know, in talking to Tammy just about some of the things in here, it's funny how when you go through some of these things that they wanted to do, how the city has been doing them, you know, and it's what we talked about that I don't, to my knowledge, the city has never, way before I was here on the council, taken a 90-degree turn in another direction. It's always kind of been consistently improving the quality of life, trying to reduce taxes, trying to, you know, provide for the safety of our residents and make it, you know, the best place to live in South Florida. So that's always been there. Whether it's been documented in a strategic plan or not, or whether the strategic plan has been looked at. And it's funny because it's looking through some of these, in the different areas, the goals, objectives, a lot of the things have been accomplished in the past few years, you know? Or there are things that maybe not accomplished, but there are things that we've implemented that check off those boxes.
It strikes me, Mayor, that when we have the goal of the project workshop, that all of those things fall into these buckets, right?
Yes.
You can say, hey, this is, you know, about public safety. This is a project that's helping us get here. I think that, and to me, I feel like that's the initiatives, right? And the strategies, the things that we're doing, the projects that, like, I feel like we've been, I don't want to say haphazardly, but we've been doing all these projects, and sometimes even when we had our project workshop, there were things that came up like, hey, what about this? We had talked about that we wanted to do this, right? I think that we can, this can be a prism by which we put all our projects through it, like, hey, does this, you know, how does this fit in terms of like where we want to be? I think that we kind of know intuitively, but I think it'll be important to kind of line up all these projects that we have, and some of them take longer than others, but at least we can, you know, have an accountability conversation about you know, where we are with these projects and how they serve the broader goals that we have as a city.
Right, and then when we do the review, we'll actually and I'll use an example with the economic development portion where, one of the strategies and initiatives is establish development guidelines that encourage business investment along 36th Street. That is the Business and Economic Development Task Force, that is one of the things that, they've done. So when you look through this, and that doesn't mean that ends, okay, we've done it, but we've started it, these are, and it shows how, how consistently, the city, what the residents want, what the councils have wanted, what the staff has worked for and stuff, has always been heading in this direction of just improving our quality of life, safety, enhancing our city, and just making it better. And I really do think our city is, if you look back, every year, we keep improving. And, I'm not saying that because I'm on the council. I mean, even before, it's, you look back and our city just keeps, it's funny when we have family or residents, come visit Miami Springs now that haven't been here in a long time, and they're like, wow, everything was so pretty. It looks so much nicer. It's, and, I think that, the city has always been doing that. So, okay, so let's go, yes, sir.
No, so I just wanted to piggyback. So, you said, and Walter says, it's a plan.
Yes.
It's a directional plan, and staff will work on operationalizing, putting timelines to it, and once we decide what the goals are. But it's interesting what you said, that a lot of the city has been doing this, broadly speaking, without necessarily looking at it on a yearly basis to review. That's what I think is happening. I think they tried it back in 2015 or something or other, and council didn't want to, for whatever reason, didn't want to review it. But I think we're in a different place, and I agree that it's really a testament to the work that was done. 112. Which, concept is council.
But consistently, in the city,
Yes. What we want to do is do a time frame, and also on an annual basis. That's fun.
And
Can I make more point?
yes, sir.
Sorry, thank you. Again, just going through this, like, I feel that there are some things, like the core values, the preamble, as I look through everything. I feel like there are some things that unless we feel it just doesn't represent what we currently, feel, then we can kind of just a minor tweak here and there. It just, as I don't want to jump ahead, but as I look at some of the goal tends to be broad, but then the objectives tend to be specific. And I think that's where we can add the most current context, because I feel like the objectives don't kind of go far enough to define what it is that we want to happen so that we achieve our goals in each one of these areas. And I think if we can do that, that will be very helpful, because then staff can go and say, hey, these are all the projects we're doing. They fit in here. This one doesn't fit. I think that, that's where I felt like we could make the most the impact is in really looking at the objectives in each one of these strategic areas.
Well, back to, we started out with the important plan, obviously, it's a roadmap, right, to get to where we want to go. And the objectives and goals are super important. So, like the vision for me, one of the things that I would like to see, which is obviously highlighting our small town, as part of the vision. Highlight our small town and the charming, small town feel with the history that we have in aviation. So then later on, we'll talk about the objective, how do we get our staff or the departments to make sure that that's a point, but yes,
And
the
that would
vision.
be, the first bullet point under vision, it should be kind of allude to that. Our beautiful residential ambience will be even more striking. We will take every opportunity to accentuate and promote our historical, which is really in keeping with our historical value to the community, our historical, I don't know, word, our connection with aviation, like aviation pioneering, those kind of things. And I think that can be included in even that first vision statement of not just, this is kind of I guess what I meant by this is it's just kind of very, you know, it could use a little more tightening up and specific and, you know, and the wording is, I don't know, I find it, not as professional, I guess, as it could be nowadays. And I understand it was written, you know, a while back, so things change. If you ever notice right now, if you get an email or something and it has, you know, more than one paragraph, you're just like, oh my God, I don't have time for this. And I mean, I used to get memos that were 6 pages long, you know, and you'd read every one. So I think our tolerance for,
If I may add one thing, I'm glad also that you mentioned the ads. I think 2 years definitely is just too short a period of time. 3 to 5 is ideal, with a most focus, right? It's not clear, so that's the most important thing. That's priority number one. But add the 10 years, you know, in time, this is a work in progress for time, right? It's not gonna be something that is today. So the 10 years is important because even though we've improved a lot of stuff, there's a lot of stuff that we did reacted because something was needed, because we didn't think ahead. So definitely, I think that I would like to focus too on some aspect, without, you know, throwing us off with the main thing. So I think we'll eventually get that priority, what we can do now. You know.
and Councilwoman, did you have something you wanted to say on those?
Yeah, I wanted to honestly, redo the whole thing, like remove it and maybe, give it another name, because core values for me, I think it's just too personal of a title for some reason. Some towns use guiding principles, some put, village expectations or something else. I like guiding principles.
I think
it's kind of
guiding
like
principles sounds
what
really
helps
good,
us,
yes.
You know, and vision as a whole. I can read a couple of examples just so you can see how you can a little bit, you know, how
Well, I think
it contrasts a little
let's-
bit from we demand, we.
Okay, no, well, it's not, the bullets should be consistent, like all of a sudden it's we demand, but the ones before it is every resident diversity, you know, they should be consistent in the, how they
Yeah.
start, that's just wording, but,
Yeah.
let's go with what Councilman had said of not,
Getting into,
you know, wording this ourselves right now, because we'll be here forever. But is everyone in agreement, like perhaps guiding principles is a more, like, core values? I think that is, you know, clearer as to, and then that, if we could all, if you have something, I think that the best way to do this, say with core values, is any comments that you have on any of these that you'd like to put in a new bullet or, you know, change a bullet, or I know I circled a whole bunch of things just because I didn't like the wording, but I didn't really make time to redo it, is get it to Tammy. Tammy, I'm sorry, you have a lot of stuff. But you'll have some bullets that we think are important, some bullets that perhaps some of us have scratched out and what you'll do is prepare a draft that we can all look at before we meet again. We'll all have the draft and have looked at it and, you know, try to hopefully be able to nip it out. Okay, so the strategic plan structure, does anyone have the 5 strategic areas that are here: public safety, economic development, municipal service delivery, financial management, and communication? Is everyone okay with those 5 strategic areas? Is there something that we're missing? Is there something that mine, or are we all okay with that?
So the chair
Because then the plan itself actually, you know, goes through strategic area 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I think I'd like to reword, the 5 strategic areas and also rename them, and then under those areas would be more of a grouped, Tammy is looking at what I'm looking at. Do you like what you're seeing?
I have,
And,
Why don't you tell us, because that's going to be pretty critical, because when we go to these next areas like public safety, if that's not the strategic plan, we can't
it
really,
will
so
fall.
tell us what you're thinking so we can kind of see the 5 strategic
So for
areas.
example, strategic area number 1 would be quality of life. Under quality of life, that would fall with 4 bullet points: public safety, economic growth, mobility, transportation, health, and well-being of all residents. And they talk about mobility, transportation, both, vehicular and non-vehicular. So we've been doing a lot of that.
What was the other one under mobility?
Health and well-being of all residents. Or we could change persons to constituents, whatever. And then we will get into, doing the goals and objectives for each. And it's very simple, it's not nothing complicated, we can totally tailor this.
Yeah, just, what are the other?
The next one is strategic area number 2 is public infrastructure. And under that, there's 5 bullet points. You have sidewalks, roads/streets, street lighting, parks and open spaces, greenways and green spaces. So I went off on that. That's public.
If we're, Mayor, if we're gonna change these kind of macro level strategic areas, it's not to say that what they're using, that's gonna
No, that's why I'm
That's gonna
saying,
mean that this is, we're kind of starting, we're gonna have to kind of take a step back and start over and kind of
well,
think.
Councilman, that's why I want to make sure that we are all in agreement with these 5 strategic plans, because before we go to the other, to start looking at them, each one, if there's one of these strategic plans that should be reworded in what we wanted to encompass, or they can be
So
delivered. So I'd like to listen. You have one anymore?
It's just 2 words.
Okay,
So I
so
can-
under public infrastructure, I don't think it needs to be, sidewalks, roads, streets, lights, it's all the same, it's public infrastructure.
Right,
It's actually one thing,
and that can fall under municipal services.
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So then we can,
Infrastructure, but for some reason, what is public services?
yes, but then you have a
But-
separate,
but
like, we can title it within
infrastructure
municipal
is not,
services,
right.
right? Like,
Municipal services is more encompassing of everything, but go ahead and give us the other 3 that you were thinking.
The other 2. Strategic area 3 is, it's titled resiliency and sustainability. Under there's 3 bullets. It's stormwater, which we're doing, and we can actually report back on that. So we have actually a lot of things that's on there. The second one is critical infrastructure. So our zoning and planning. And environmental impact. The last one is government and organizational support. So we have 5 bullets. The first one is innovation. Second one is transparency. The third one is communication. The fourth one is customer experience. And the last one is organizational culture. So I guess that went into all of the communication aspects, surveys.
Okay, so let's do this. The public infrastructure, like Councilman Behet said, is really municipal service. I'm just trying to see if we're missing something with the
The only
strategic
one that-
plan that perhaps.
the only one that I think is a stretch to fit into one is in regards to what you mentioned from the last meeting, is, the issues of resiliency and sustainability. But I mean, that can be a subsection of municipal services. We can have as many, objectives there as we want. We can tailor them to particular areas. I'm a little worried about redoing the
Yes.
strategic areas, because then we're gonna have to play a game of like, where does everything fit? And I feel like that's gonna be more than we signed up for.
And again, what I'd like to make sure is to see if there's something that we haven't considered. I mean, these were things that were considered, in 2012, these topics. If there are topics that we haven't considered that we should, that we make sure that we either add them or that they're included in something else. Like, I'm thinking under municipal services, public infrastructure is one of them, but also Under public infrastructure, the resiliency and sustainability is part of that, because we're doing that right now with the flood control for, pump station
Right,
and
under municipal services.
yes,
Yeah,
those are
I
things that, resilience, sustainability that we're doing currently that are not in the 10-year plan, they're actually things, and they need to continue. I mean, we've got other roads that, once we finish with South and all this that need, but it's a consistent plan to identify areas throughout the city where we need improvements in the stormwater, flood control, in the, critical infrastructure, I'm guessing is the critical assets.
But I feel like, I agree, I think I'm agreeing with you. I feel like we can be deliberate and explicit about the things that we want to see within these strategic areas to make sure that it's addressed, again, explicitly, right? That we can talk about, we can make that part of these big strategic areas, make it part of the goals and objectives.
And like I noticed, they don't have, financial management, which is something that, well, it probably falls under this government and organizational support, but that's, that's a very broad one that we have that a lot of these quality of life, economic growth, mobility, transportation, health and well-being.
What is that? As far as financial.
Okay, so public infrastructure would be under municipal services. The quality of life. Safety is under public safety, economic development, municipal services, financial management.
See where other cities have a financial management sector.
You know what? They may not have it, but I think it's a really important part of it. I think they may not have it, but they should, because I think it's just a really important, ultimately, we're all the ones that are responsible for the fiscal management of the
Well,
city.
by our vision.
It's like, right, so I think that to be in our strategic plan is.
It strikes me, Mayor, that
And I think from going through each of these different sections, the financial management was the one that pretty much standalone, doesn't need much tweaking. It's very good. I mean,
Yeah,
we've got,
yeah.
there are actual metrics there of, how they'll, what our goal is to sustain the city's financial well-being, making prudent, conservative financial decisions that are in the best long-term interest of the city. Guard the public trust with consistent, sound financial management practices, and then we have the metrics there of obtain clean audit opinion, receive the GFOA excellent support. So, and Chris is here, but these to us, and just because we're in financial management, have you seen?
That's Chris is not there.
That's not Chris.
Oscar, it's not Chris. We talked about it. Put your glasses on.
No, it's me.
She needs to put her glasses on.
I know, it's me.
Well, she won't confuse you for Chris Yoka for our finance director.
At least with blurred vision.
Okay.
He's got one.
Dad will tell you when they give out the check sheet.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Mayor, it strikes me that something like quality of life, there are public safety initiatives that are important for quality of life. There are things in municipal services that are part of quality of life. There's part of economic development. Like, I feel like that's a very broad one that will get covered by a lot of.
What if, but public safety, depending on, you're talking to public safety, it means police a lot, to certain people, to certain circles, there's public safety is police. So let's do, what if we expand that to public safety and quality of life? Because to me, there's a big, and even though they overlap, between public safety and quality of life.
But for some people, quality of life is that we have a lot of trees and that we're a tree city USA. For other people, quality of life is that it's about crime and police response, or it's about our ordinances because they have a neighbor that has a vacation rental property. I feel like quality of life is different for everybody, and I feel like it doesn't strike me as being I mean, I guess it can be a standalone strategic area. I just feel like. Right, okay.
Combine it with public safety.
Yeah,
Combine it with public safety as.
economic development could be something that improves and municipal services. And I feel like, all of these things, right, are about improving the quality of life for our residents.
Probably, you're absolutely right. It's very broad. It's very broad, and that, to me, that fits more in the vision.
Yeah, that's
And specific strategic goal. Public safety impacts from a lot of things. Well,
municipal services.
but I think that, mentioning that at the beginning, as a vision of who we are as a city council, is, yeah, to enhance residents' quality of life, and that's everyone's quality of life.
That's why I like that you wanted to put it in the mission statement. I think that should be something that kind of guides, we should all be in service of that.
Through the chair,
Yes.
these titles that were given with the bullet points, it's kind of creates an umbrella for multiple aspects that would fall generalizing under the term. And then we would get into so much specifics for goals and objectives for those items. So we're, if we're going to get, we want to talk about. Sorry about the quality of life. Here, to enhance the health and well-being of all residents, and see the objective 1, develop dedicated areas for seniors, and objective 2, continue to strengthen communities partnerships. So we get into the details of those different bullet points. It's not too crazy, but
Yeah.
We do
just
have
like
that,
even-
okay, you know what, we do have those kinds of things for senior services, fall recreation or under municipal services. So perhaps, well, no, this is just in,
Even in here, this is their links, right? This is their strategic area called quality of life. I see develop the town center district. as economic development. I see, I see public safety stuff here. I see municipal service develop dedicated areas for seniors. I see response times for emergency operations like that. I feel like economic growth, this economic development, I feel like they made a strategic area called quality of life that subsumes like a bunch of different things. I feel like quality of life is very broad.
all right, let's do this. Let's leave quality of life. I think it's an important thing to put into one of these,
Yeah.
but it's not a big deal. Let's discuss the specifics. You know what I'm saying? This is
Right,
just a title. So let's leave that for later if we feel that we should have it in something, and let's get started with going back to, again, then, and I have to agree with Councilman Behet, if we start dramatically, I mean, our goal here is to, be efficient and basically, even what city is this, in any cities that strategic plan that you look at, again, unless it's a really, really different city from ours, perhaps Miami Beach, or something that is so tourist oriented and all. Most of these cities, somewhere, the wording may be different and the application may be different, but it's going to be in there, the same types of things, the public safety, economic development and all. So
We can look at also the shores, to help us, because that's a very similar,
very similar
almost
to
like-
us.
very similar. Even, I know, but I'm just saying the dynamics of that town and our town,
Yes, are very
I would say
similar.
that we're as close as they're gonna get.
Okay, I just want to mention one thing before I move on. This is only one page of that topic that we're talking about. So I like the layout and it's readable, it's understandable. They highlight the objectives that were, from 2015 to 2020, they did a report back. So it's kind of like a flow of like something that's happened before. Here, we don't have that. And then you just have your goals and objectives. At the bottom, you have your sample strategies, which is what we're gonna talk about now, listing things that we want to engage in or fulfill under this umbrella. So, example, increases the use of social media. This is already getting into the goals and objectives. These are where the bullet points, but we just go with the title and then we start just putting a bunch of bullet points. But then I don't see what we've done before, like what Walter was saying, like the review to implement it so that we know where we're coming from.
Because that was never
That
put
was the
in here.
first
That
strategic
wasn't-
plan ever done.
Right.
Oh.
No, that's the thing is that this plan was done and there was no process for review, so it was like, it was a new council, it was just shelved, and that was it. And that's why we're trying to say, we're saying that what we're going to put in here as part of, and I don't know how we do that exactly, Roger, but that it's one of the things that, you know, a review, an annual review by the council of the strategic plan, annual review and updated as necessary or something is done so that, you know, because as I looked at this strategic plan, it was done from the council before I was on the council, I'm finding that a lot of the things that we've done, you know, still hold and have actually been in line with what their vision was. It's just, you know, we haven't pulled it out, just looked at it, and again, I think it's really important that our strategic plan be not real specific, because that's where, when you do the annual review, you know, if we weren't able, for some reason, if we weren't able to get the fund, you know, or for some project, then all of a sudden it's like, well, nothing's in there, but yet we may be requesting or seeking funding for something else or another project that's priority. So they have to be kind of.
That's why they put that word sample.
That need economic
That kind of removes,
development.
I think, the edge on holding you to your word. I understand what you're saying. I've noticed that they use certain terminology so that we're not pressed.
For example, exactly, because there are certain things that we will be doing in future councils, will be doing that will fit into these, you know, the yearly review that they can check it off. I'll give you another one, just in looking through this, communication with residents. Right? We just started a newsletter this past year, of the weekly newsletter. It fits right in line with improving communication with the residents. Our social media,
Has never been better.
has never been better. And if you look on here, what it talks about social media is Twitter. You know, having Twitter and communicating with residents, and yet we have so many other things that have been implemented recently that fall right in line with the vision that was in this plan years ago. So the yearly review will help us also kind of put things in there and say, okay, this means that. And I think that,
Well, that's a 7-year cap. So the yearly review will allow us not to have.
you know, try to remember back
7
things
years
that,
ago.
right, so,
I
okay,
mean, I'm less interested in changing, there's a million ways to skin a cat, sorry, Laney. But I think that what's most important, there's gonna be some things in here like annexation, right? Like, we're gonna continue, like, it's the cross we bear, right? We're gonna continue to think about like what we can do for annexation. And so it doesn't, I feel like the most important part is getting into the objectives, the goal. I think that's the most important thing.
all right, so,
Can we
and
stick to the same
yes,
categories?
huh?
So we're gonna stick to the same categories.
Let's,
Not to complicate it.
if we want to, I think, you know, if we see afterwards that we want to add something to say public safety and whatever, we'll come back to it, but let's go ahead. And I think Councilman Fahad has a good point. That's the only way we'll probably get through this is to just,
And may I add something?
yes,
For purposes of doing this in-house, I'm limited on staff. So, with that being said, I think, you know, I'm getting consensus. I believe that we can keep the same 5 categories with possibly adding a 6th category of resiliency and sustainability. Yes, is that correct? Can I do that and work from this document? We can always make improvements years to come, but I think that's gonna be an outside consultant
I
doing that,
think
not an
that's
in-house
a
project.
Very good point, Tammy. And again, like I said, you know, no matter how different strategic plans you look at them for municipalities, they're pretty much, it contains the same goals and, you know, information and all. It's gonna be worded differently, like you said, a little different. I think what we have to be real clear and on is, you know, what we want for our city, you know, what we think is the best plan for our city.
Okay, so under public safety, I think the only thing with me, the first sentence, ensuring our residents' public safety, we should include our businesses and visitors. Because it's public safety,
So ensuring the public safety of our residents.
businesses.
Business owners,
Business
and
owners and
visitors.
visitors. And then the goal is enhance public safety and security, which is basically that.
Yeah, now comes the good part, the objectives.
Okay, through the chair.
Yes, sir.
So I have a little bit of a problem. Too vague. I think goals are should provide direction broadly, right? Your objectives are the way to implement goals. So I would prefer to have something like to provide the resources necessary to enhance public safety and security in the city. In other words, that's where we're going with this. And that, the objectives are specific things. So, it agree, and we can word it any other, but I just think it's too. Just kind of making some notes here, because the short term, the objectives define measurable ways to do this, right? And I'm not sure if, at least in my conversation, kind of talk about how much direction we want to give staff without getting real specific, right? In terms of actual things that have to be done, we could be here all night about those objectives. Not sure how deep we want to get into.
That's why I think those,
Yeah, but what I'm still saying. I'm not saying that we don't talk about it. Saying that we can give some examples of how we think this could be implemented, but then we get staff's feedback, right? Because they're the ones that are going to be implemented.
well, and I think that's what Tammy said, is she would like us to give her the goals and the objectives, and then she'll work with staff to come up with what's possible, what would be measurable, and then present us with a draft of what we're coming up with. Okay, but under goals, you would like it just to say, provide resources.
To provide the necessary resource to enhance public
I
safety.
think resources and also, not just resources, though, and I don't want to use the word vision, it's hard, but, resources and the direction, or, you know what I'm saying? It's not just what are the resources you
So-
need, it's, we have to provide where we want to be.
So what is the goal?
Let's use the hotels, the primary hotels, that we're going to provide not just the resources, but also,
So I mean,
what would you say?
I had 3 objectives that I wrote in, like looking at the objectives for public safety, right? It has reduced traffic accidents by a certain percentage, reduce property crimes, increase communication, positive interaction, expand police personnel. I think that some of those are still goals, or objectives that we have to this day. But I wrote like, a coordinated increase in traffic stops, however we decide to measure that. But that's a big thing. I think people are not happy with the fact that people drive down unless we're, going really fast. And I know that that's something that's already been addressed, but I just think we need to memorialize it here. And then reducing crime and response to crime at the hotels, I think is something that I had a couple things. I feel like we should spend most of our thinking on objectives that we think are relevant today. And then a year from now, we revisit this and and then obviously, if we come up with objectives, right? How we're gonna reduce crime and response to crimes at hotels. Well, there's already some plans in place in talking with staff that could be part of the strategies initiatives. And then we talk about like how that gets measured. And I feel like the objectives section is where we're going. That's where the nuance is. That's where we're gonna get, I feel like, the most return on investment from our conversation tonight, is coming up with objectives that make sense today versus back in 2012. Like, I don't reduce traffic accidents. Apparently there were a lot of traffic accidents back in 2012. I know the residents are really upset that people are speeding and there's not a lot of traffic stops. Property crimes is always important, but I think that where people are upset is about, you know, about the crime on 36th Street and the hotels and our responses to that.
Reduce hotel crime is a very specific thing that should be on there because that's an ongoing issue, you know, and that's measurable. You know how many, the police chief, you know, tell us how many crimes occurred by month at each hotel. And,
It just seems to me, Mayor, that our, a
and
goal
that's
of
an ongoing issue that we know we're dealing with right now. So,
a goal of enhancing public safety and security, like, I think that's the conversation we need to have now. Let's look at these 4 bullet points. What do we add? let's.
Under objectives.
Yeah, under objectives.
okay,
What are some
Tammy,
things-
what you have said is that we provide the goals and objectives and you will come back with strategies and
That's
initiatives
Yes.
that the staff can do. And I think you made a really good point. You know, it can't be pie in the sky, although part of it is going to be, but you know, it's gotta be things that we can really do that are within our control, that are.
But staff is meeting with the owners of the hotels that had, you know, the most egregious amount of crime. Like, that's an initiative right there. That's a strategy. And I think that's where we need to focus our attention. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just threw 2 out there, right? I feel like traffic stops is something that needs to be an objective for us. And I feel like
Okay, so
talking
let's-
about the crime, response to crime at hotels is another big one. And I'm open to more, right? But
Let's go back to goal 1 second. Councilman, Vasquez, so under goal, what you would like is just to say, provide the resources and something to enhance public safety and security, right?
That's right.
Okay, just.
I mean,
a
I'm not,
sentence.
I'm not, in opposition to objectives. Well, my only caution is that, you need to, so objectives are measurable. So things that, if they're an action that's measurable, right? And that, what are the measurables? What are the measurables that we want to have to support that goal?
And that's what these that are already here are things that, I don't know that we know what the result is, but reduce traffic accidents by October, by 15% by.
And if I may ask, I'd like to take those 2 first bullet points out. They're out of the city's control. How many traffic accidents happen?
We shouldn't get into percentage of those.
Yeah, I mean, that's really out of control, out of our control. What we can do is part of, you know, when you're reducing it down to a department, how is it that we can provide public safety to, you know, just to the overall city? You know, have less routes coming across the sidewalks, less broken sidewalks. Those are things that are measurable that we can work on with the city. We cannot reduce the amount
But
of
we
traffic
can't-
accidents
but
as a whole.
not as a whole, but where we have specific, for instance, and we do this all the time, where we're getting resident complaints or a certain number of accidents at a certain location. We have reached out to the county and, for instance, Oakwood Circle. We've had a lot of traffic accidents there. And so we're reducing, you know, we're building the Oakwood Circle in part because the county wouldn't put in a 4-way stop, which is what we had asked. I can't remember the details of it, but
Correct.
something like that. So where we know that there are a significant number of traffic accidents, or we get resident complaints about it. I'm thinking of on Curtis Parkway, Northwest 36th Street. We just recently with PG reached out to, was that FDOT? Yes, that manages that, and got them to put in a turn signal. So that's not something that we have no control over. In general, every traffic accident, that's true, but we can reduce
But like, so,
traffic accidents.
You're relying
where-
on another entity to be able to.
but something like
But it's still a
reducing,
goal that, you know, it's addressing, maybe what we need to do is,
well,
and
Mayor,
I hear you saying that in itself, that may not reduce the traffic accidents, you know, it's
Through the chair.
yes.
Basically, what I'm looking at as a strategic plan, we're gonna go ahead and put ideas in paper, and then each department individually will go ahead and get into the weeds of what our objectives and goals are and how they are gonna execute
They're
our
gonna provide
plan.
the strategy.
So then that way, at the end of that review, we can go ahead and start, listing the objectives that we told them to work on, and then we can report back in detail what exactly was done. We don't have to complicate ourselves so much.
I don't have a problem with the second bullet, right? We're fortunate in that like violent crimes are not like a huge issue in Mighty Springs, right? But property crimes are. And that's something that we can, like, you know that we have an issue where people come, they pull out door handles of cars late at night. And I know that the chief did a detail where there were officers on bikes with support personnel standing by that was able to crack down on some things. I mean, I think that's part of what we need to, I think that's totally within what we're doing here.
The
Right.
last two, the third and the fourth objective is pretty much on point. They're gonna tell you how they're gonna do that, how they're gonna get there.
And again, so like we add an objective where we feel like it's missing, right? Like if we decide traffic stops is something that we want to see more of, right? If we do something addressing like the hotel crime, which I feel like we're already, and then the strategies and initiatives, I feel like we're already doing these, but if we put it on paper, then it kind of like, we know like, hey, at the end of this year, we want to report, right? Or every 6 months, what's happening with property crime? What are the rates going up? Have they gone down? What initiatives were tried out? How are we measuring it here at the bottom? Did the number of property crimes increase or decrease? I feel like, I feel like it's okay to say, we want to see a decrease in property crimes, whatever the percentage we decide. So when they did this in 2012, they gave themselves a three-year goal. Because they did it by October of 2015. I feel like we're going down the right path in thinking about these things and coming up with some objectives that are relevant for today.
Through the chair.
Yeah, let me let Councilman Vasquez.
Now that we talk about. Reducing traffic accidents, so forth. It seems to me that the most significant issue around this that I see and I hear data is speed, city limits. Right? And it's funny because people speeding listens. But it is, in terms of safety, right? Safety. That traffic stops. That is a correlation. And how do we pass safety as one of the objectives? Something about that. Here is accident, but people don't follow the speed. That's just.
I'm not sure how, that on there, I just don't know how they would measure that with just speeding. Other than giving increasing
That's why
speeding tickets.
That's why I worded it as, an increase in traffic stop. So, they have, the chief has that information, right? I think that one of the things I've noticed is that when the council has received stats on what the traffic stops are, it kind of makes you think like, well, people are saying we're not doing traffic stops, and sure, it looks like we're doing a lot of traffic, right? So like, I think that, inspecting what you expect, monitoring what the number of traffic stops are, I think that most people would want that. At least that's my sense from talking to
I
residents.
just don't see how. I'm not saying it can't be done and it should be done and we get traffic. I just don't see that as part of our strategic goal of monitoring traffic stops. You know what I'm saying? It's such a,
But if we have an
It's
increase in
such a,
citation, we're
Through
gonna.
the chair.
It's not the strategic.
To the chair.
The strategic goal is to enhance the safety.
no, but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be increased number of traffic stops. There has to be, the objective has to be
Just traffic safety.
Citation.
traffic safety. Okay, maybe something like this,
Improve traffic
yes.
safety.
Okay, something like that. And then this is how they would do it.
Yes.
I like yours,
I
Councilman,
get your
because,
sentiment.
saying we're going to increase the number of traffic stops and traffic citations. Hopefully, we don't have to, because all that means is we're just
Well, they're already
punishing
measured
someone
that.
for doing something wrong and it doesn't necessarily. So let's do something like that where, and then the chief And his staff can come back with strategies on how they would do that.
Give us stats.
Improve traffic safety throughout the city.
Through the chair. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I think we're going around in circles because we don't have a really good layout. Right, so we're trying to make sense out of something that's written and we really can't identify those things. And everything that we're doing, what I've been hearing, it's literally following what we're trying to accomplish as far as generalizing terms, then executing the department heads. This public safety sector here in the strategic, for me, this is policing, it's not public safety. For me, this is we're doing a plan for police. This is
Public
not.
safety is police. I mean,
It
that's
is, but
the
there are a
term.
lot
When
of
you say
other
public
things.
safety,
No,
it
but public
refers
safety is
to-
more, it's more generalized
to
because we have
some,
public
but in
works, but
general,
yes and no.
public safety, and that's why I was saying it should be.
That's why
we wanna
these
expand
umbrellas
quality.
make sense because public safety could be as far as outreach as a bad sidewalk. Like what Tammy was saying, it can be a bench that's broken and should be fixed. So, and then we fall into all of these categories, and then at the end, where we're putting our goals and objectives, each of those bullet points, they won't pertain to that certain department. So, for example, just for saying, increase the use of social media and digital, in our case would be to continue. Increase the use of social media and digital interference to engage with residents. Next to that in parentheses, you would put the department. So in this case, it would be Shannon, right, communication or City Hall. Development and implement traffic flow and congestion management improvement strategies led by Town of Miami Springs Police Department and to implement management of reducing speeding. That would be Police Department. So
Let's do this, council, because
departments that
we
fall under
don't
the
have
umbrella.
that in front of us, and we haven't had time to review it. We haven't had
No,
time to
I'm
review
gonna
it.
share it,
So what I'm saying
but
is,
this is, the flow doesn't work, and I think the more things are.
I think what you're saying, when you're reading something from another city, and
It is, I'm
it
gonna
might be
share it.
very valued, it's just, we don't have it in front of us, and there's, and we don't have time to review it right now to
Okay.
review their thing, so.
Alright,
Let's
so
get
we're
back
trying
on
to avoid
task.
So here's
It doesn't-
That's what we're gonna need.
Just to
Well,
remind,
we may need to,
Sure.
because,
Like, the-
but we
Sure.
may need to, let's stay on task with what we have of public safety, and
Change the heading.
to your comments of public safety, to me, public safety is police.
Police.
That's what it means,
So
and,
change the heading.
no, that's why I was saying public safety and quality of life, because, or public safety and something else, because,
Public safety and emergency management.
even emergency management, that's not, if you want to put in sidewalk safety, the sidewalks and stuff, that's not emergency management, you know what I'm saying, so.
Quality of life.
But I don't wanna get stuck with just, what I'm saying is, if we're talking about public safety, and that's police, then this would all be police would do. If we don't mean just police, then we should not say just public safety, we should say public safety and something to allude that it's a broader scope. Okay,
I just want to remind us. I asked the question. In fact, structure of our conversation. And we should follow this structure, and we agree that we will follow the structure, so, because that's the framework. This structure.
I don't agree to following this type of structure.
Well,
But-
wait a minute, wait a minute. I'm
but
talking
let's
about
do this,
For the purposes,
Councilwoman,
for
because
the
remember
purposes,
of
excuse me,
getting this.
Yeah.
That's what we came here for.
Right.
That is the
for the
update what we
purposes
got.
of the workshop, this was the agenda.
Yeah.
Right,
We're gonna go following the structure, whatever changes we want to make within it, they're exploring it. And we can certainly add some things to this, but I just want to keep us focused on, the wording. The goal, we want to enhance the goal or move it around or whatever, and then some specific objectives, bullet points, and I think 3 or 4 would probably suffice. So that they can take this and to it, at each area as the problem suggested, can have some input to the objective, to the strategies and things like that.
And with the format, and I know what bothers you is format, I'm not thrilled about this format either, okay? But, if we get too stuck in the weeds with the format, we're never gonna, and again, the basic concepts, I think, are pretty similar to what are there. So I guess what we can do with the format is let's go through this, and once we have a draft, I don't think anyone's gonna be upset if somebody takes it on, and perhaps you take it on, Councilwoman, saying, and seeing, and again, we have to do it within the realm of, we don't wanna go to a consultant, to do this, actually, this,
Honestly,
I was
this is
asking
done by
Tammy,
a
who is
consultant.
person,
The only thing that we're not gonna have, which we don't have to exercise, we don't want to, is an actual survey that was done. Other than that, you have to reinvent the wheel.
No, exactly.
It to us.
so the format itself, if you have a better format, that can be, the meeting can be put into another format, I don't think any
And
of
then
us
the
would be.
verbiage, we can tailor it
Yes,
to
the
what
verbiage
our
I think
city
is just, it
For the
lacks
city.
too, exactly. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead under the public safety. If we're agreeing that public safety is just gonna be police,
Yes.
okay. Then under police, these are pretty, clear objectives for police. Perhaps instead of reduce traffic accidents is, what did you say?
Improve
Councilman?
traffic safety.
Traffic safety, traffic
Improve it.
flow and safety,
Yeah, I mean, I guess traffic safety.
traffic safety, okay.
I mean, they gotta, later on.
That's a
the-
general,
the
but that's
manual,
something that
we'll
they
see.
definitely,
So Mayor,
yes.
the Councilman Vasquez mentioned that goals need to be SMART, right? And SMART is measurable. That's not really how this is structured in terms of the goals, but if we're not gonna have something measurable of goals, the objectives I feel need to. So improving traffic safety, I think, is too broad.
Okay, but improving traffic safety is an objective, it's definitely something that under strategies and initiatives, the police come back
They have to.
with us as to how they're going to do that. What is their plan to do that? And it may be doing more frequent stops, the, I don't know what they call those stops that they do all of a sudden one day. Or details, okay,
Should we
things like that. So
decide-
they would come back to us with their strategies and initiatives of how they will improve. And I think that's a reasonable objective to us, to say improve traffic safety throughout the city. I mean, why wouldn't that be a reasonable, something that we want to constantly,
Also more specific.
I think,
Like specific and like a.
Yeah, I feel like that's too broad, because then how are you gonna measure that?
Councilman
At the
Vasquez?
budget,
makes a very good.
at the budget meeting, they have to report back.
In this case, just to go back to the original, they did get specific. I'm not saying this has to be just specific, but it's something that's specific and measurable.
Or maybe after staff comes back to us with like, hey, this is how we can measure it, then we can decide, all right, so like, what's a goal and what,
So that,
but I definitely think that it
clear
needs to
on the
be
objectives.
more specific in the objectives.
I agree.
Well, and I was gonna say the next one, which was, well, let's not say reduce traffic accidents, because we'll eliminate that one if we're saying improve traffic safety, right? Reduce property crime by 10%. I was gonna say, how would you choose 10%? Like, how did they choose? I wouldn't have any idea of what percentage to choose unless I'm looking at figures and seeing what's possible. So I don't want us to say by a certain percentage unless anyone has any idea of, it's like looking at your budget and saying, oh, I'm going to improve my budget by 10% next year, unless we're looking at a budget and have some idea of, what's reasonable. We can't pull a magical number out of our hat.
I think that's what they did in 2012. Consulting, that they looked at what it was they were trying to reduce and say, this is what it was in the last 2 years. We're gonna reduce it by 10%. They had that.
Okay.
I would go to the Phillips percentage.
So we don't get that.
This was in 3 years because this plan was in October 2012, and this is saying in 3 years we'll reduce it by 10%. So,
Yes,
Mr. Chair, Mayor, I think for now, just leave it as an objective, so staff can come back with a bunch of ideas
Okay.
and strategies, and there's gonna be maybe percentages, look, our goal is to reduce this way. And then we can go back and say, the objective will be this now. But right now, to say percentages and stuff like that, we have no idea.
so what?
But wait till we,
What
for
are
now,
you
just to direct the staff
to reduce property crimes?
that.
Or to continue, one second, Councilwoman,
Yeah.
to reduce property crimes, are you saying, or,
I think that there you may be more specific on 36th Street. That's usually where.
well, I think that we should have a separate bullet of reduce hotel crime.
Okay.
Because that's specific enough that that can be measured. That's a metric that they know how many calls they get, they know the kinds of calls. You know, so that should be, and that's certainly something that, you know, is impacting our city right now and we have to address. So the property crimes, yes. And I'm not sure, are we saying then we want to leave it in by 10% in 3 years? Or just leave it, reduce property crimes continually? How about annually? Make an annual effort to reduce property crimes.
As long as we keep updating this and checking in at the end of every year, we'll see whether or not we were successful. And in the strategies initiatives, then staff can say like, hey, these are the things, these are some details that we did, that would be some traffic details, so, you know, so. They can put down what they think will help.
We'll measure it there, did it work or did not work?
Okay.
And you need to improve it and do this or that, but yeah.
Okay. So
We're gonna do it every year, I think that's the avenue for us to measure this whole plan.
To the chair,
yes.
and also, we have to remember the report back from the departments come through our budget meetings, because they provide we look at their area, their department at the bottom, we have their objectives and the goals that they were able to attain. So that's kind of like a report back to this strategic plan at the end of the day. We don't kind of like put in what they've done into our strategic plan. Like, we're not gonna say, hey, we want this, then they tell us, and then we're gonna come back to this and stick it in there. I think that's kind of like reported back at the end of the year, and it's reflected on the achieved objectives and goals that we established and generalized for them to look into. And now we're gonna become policemen, we're gonna become.
I lost you though.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
On the budget report.
Right, but let's say with these objectives, when we give them an objective here, what Tammy has asked for is that if we provide them with our goals and objectives, that she will work with staff to come back with strategies and initiatives that the departments can do that are measurable, that will meet
Identify
those.
the.
So that has nothing to do with budget meetings, these are just things that.
What I'm saying is that at the budget meeting, when you receive the reports, each department has at the bottom, I remember, the goals that they were able to achieve and the objectives. So they report back to us, so it'll reflect annually on what they've accomplished in that, whatever it is that we need. So exactly what we're doing, we're generalizing those terms, what our goals are, because I can't say specifically, I want 10%, like, what we want to do is what you said, implement management strategies to reduce traffic, to reduce crime, to reduce this. Let them, that we'll season them, and then they'll come and report back to us what they want to do. We don't have to put it here. It'll be reported back once, you know, they have that reflective.
Well, they're gonna put it here, what they're going to do, but then at the budget, they do provide, this is their accomplishments this past year. And that will be their accomplishments will be, even though on an annual basis, we'll be going back to that, but that'll give us an idea, obviously for this budget, you know, whatever we do, I mean, we'll see some things that are related no matter what, but, okay, yes, I know what you're saying, their accomplishments for the past year in the budget.
And then we're gonna be going crazy with that, so it's kind of like a report. I guess that's the measurement.
If I may ask. So we're focusing on reducing property crimes as one example.
Improved traffic safety is one.
Right. But I'm going on, I know how to work on the traffic safety, but for instance, like the reduced property crimes. If I were trying to think for the departments, how would we implement some strategies or initiatives to reduce property crimes? Are we talking about property crimes for city facilities? Are we talking about property crime for homeowners? There's lots of things that the residents can do, you know, have, you know.
So you want to reward.
Well, and again, that the objective has to be something measurable, something that the city is in control of.
Okay, reducing, and I don't think it's property crimes, I think we're talking about crimes, violent crimes, I don't know, police calls.
Right, so, and I guess that's what I'm trying to get at.
What is it, when you look at the statistics for a city, and they compare, you know, city to city, and you say, what is that? It's violent crimes, it's total crimes, violent crimes?
Property crimes and violent crimes are reported separately.
Right, but they are measured.
And,
Happy.
and our
Not
police.
violent.
And I think that's where it goes to the idea of where the reduced crime at hotels. We can manage that. We can talk to the hotels, we can start implementing things in conjunction with the hotels. But when you're talking about property crimes as a whole,
So
how
I
is that
think what you're
measurable by
trying
the
to say is
city?
maybe we can identify and target areas
I'm not
that
sure
are
how
high
it
crime.
can be measurable. I mean, we're talking about crime. The police respond to calls
We've done it
and those are
before.
reports. We have, you know what I'm saying? If anything's
Right,
measurable,
But
it seems like
how
that
do
would
we,
be.
how do we work on those reducing that? We can always report the number of crimes in a year.
That's
That is
just
the
a-
object is, the objective is, well, more surveillance would be one.
Whatever.
More surveillance, but then that requires somebody, that requires more policing, so.
Maybe not, there's management systems. So
Um,
that's.
I think
where
in
they
the
have to
past,
go and look.
we've had a problem with people that come to the city late at night and pull on door handles. And both of my cars have been broken into that way, right? And I know that the city had, a couple of years back was like, did an initiative where like they communicated to residents like, hey, make sure that you double check that you're locking your cars and that, and I know that there was a detail done. Where they arrested people because they had somebody on a bike, dark, a police officer, who was just going through the neighborhood and caught people. Like, I feel like they're already working on this. I think that it wouldn't be that difficult for the chief to come up with something that, that would address this. I mean, again, like, it's a separate thing, right? Somebody breaking into your car and stealing things, that's property. Somebody like, breaking into your house and stealing, that's a property crime. I know that that's how those things are I've seen reported.
Okay, how about if we just say reduce crime? I think that's our goal, is to continually, not just say, oh, well, our crime, I mean, we have crime in the city. It may not be as high as in other areas of Dade County, but we definitely have crime in the city. So on an annual basis, what we'd like to see is, the objective is to continue to reduce crime or to.
But I feel like we're moving away from specificity and I feel like this is the area where we have to be more specific. Even if we wait until they report to us what they're gonna do and how they're gonna measure it, then we'll come up with a goal. But like, I
So-
feel like,
Well, we could do that, and then add the verbiage of identifying targeted areas that project higher crime rates, because the service is gonna be the same for the whole community, but maybe an extra emphasis, maybe like you say, on those targeted high.
But let me ask you, what are we saying with reduced property crimes? That we want to use that, we don't want to use that, we don't want to use property, we want to use.
I think that that's
Let's go
an
back.
indicator that
Okay, reduce property crimes. Okay, all right. And it has to be measured.
I'm just saying that, that's.
And it has, right.
That's something
I mean, these are police reports, so you can measure that. There's, police report is relatively easy. All right. Property crimes. Because hotel crime, if we want to reduce hotel crime, that'll just be its own category for hotels. And when we're reducing property crimes. Let's do this. Leave it there like that, property crimes, and let the chief and his staff come back to us as to an initiative, how to measure that. And our goal is, the objective is that we continue to reduce that, always that we. Yes, sir.
Take out, just, 10% doesn't sound like that. Could be achieved. I'm just saying, whatever that 10% is, depends on what the crime rate is. But I think that this is what they were trying to do, is to get a measure to say, reduce this crime rate, this is a problem. Reduce it by 10%. It's have to be 10, it could be 5, it could be 15, I don't know.
We don't have to go
But
that
you give it some specificity going back to.
I just don't, I'm concerned putting a percentage without seeing data,
Yeah.
because
Yeah, I don't like
it could be 50% could be really reasonable, depending on what the data is, or,
I don't see why
only
we can't.
1% could be really reasonable.
Slide with the space.
So,
No, I just a blank percent, I just say blank percent. Because
Let's just wait till we get all the information back.
the other way to look at it is like,
We're not gonna fill this thing out.
no, with the millage is, our goal has always been, say, I'm using as an example, our millage rate, when we establish our millage rate. Our goal has always been to reduce it more than last year. And sometimes it's very, very small what we do, but we're constantly bringing it down. And to say we're gonna reduce it by, our millage by 10% is like, there's,
Right, so you wanna say reduce it,
we might as well say 1,000,000,
reduce it,
100%.
reduce it on an annual basis.
Yes.
I think the people that can, the different departments are best suited to come up with a goal. I would have to believe, right, that each department kind of has their own little mini strategic plan for their department and goals that they have and things that they want to achieve. I think that if they author up the strategies and initiatives, I think that from that, we can come up with some specificity.
so let's just leave it at to reduce property crimes. That should always be a goal for us.
I have a suggestion, we just.
Yes.
I don't know if you guys would like it, but, maintain a safe city through community-based law enforcement, strong code enforcement, and effective crime prevention management strategies. I don't know. Oh, there's
Wait till we get to municipal services.
But don't we- But read it again.
Ed said, to maintain a safe city through community-based law enforcement, or it could be whatever we want to say, strong code enforcement and effective fire prevention and emergency response programs, because that's all part of public safety. Measure and address community perceptions of fire and safety.
yeah.
Maintain a robust plan for disaster recovery and community health for the emergencies, I mean, I don't know, but it's.
All right,
I believe that these departments can come to us with
Yes.
deliverables, with things that they think are reasonable, like you say, like, hey, our objective is we want to reduce property crime, let's just say. And then they'll come to us with like, okay, these are the things I think we can do, and these are the things that we feel are deliverables that.
And it can't just be, well, we have to hire more staff. I mean, there's other, obviously, hiring more staff is always.
But are we keeping that bullet, expanding police personnel?
Well, let's get there. Increase communication and positive interaction between the residents and businesses. I think that should also be an objective of increased communication and positive interaction between police residents. We should also add and businesses and business owners, right? Okay, the next one, expand police personnel development and education programs. I don't know why that would be here, because that should be under the police's budget,
I would say personnel deployment. That's
Development.
professional development.
right? So that should be under the police, their budget.
Then you want to, continue to educate the police, you want to make sure they're.
Well, but I think
up to
that
date
would
with-
be under what we have, we started an educational program for all employees, where we, and that should be expand, perhaps, personal development and educational programs that should be for all our employees, so that should probably be somewhere else. We have the tuition reimbursement that we started about 2 years ago, where, if employees continue their college education, we reimburse them for part of the study that has to do within their scope of work, the courses that they're taking. So I don't have, I just find expand police personnel development and education programs, that would be under their goal for their department. But this might be a good thing for us to put under employees.
They may come back to us with an initiative that we need another audit. Like if we say this is what we want to do, they could say we could use, an additional
Well,
officer.
and we could always use more officers, but there's gotta be other ways that, that we can handle this, obviously.
I had misread that and I thought it said expand police personnel deployment.
Oh, okay.
So I thought that was speaking to adding an officer.
Right.
Maybe we don't do that and
So,
we'll let the chief ask for another officer.
Improving the
Which will
department.
probably be in and that might be, it's something that, that he puts in the budget of what he wants. Okay, so, and then reduce hotel crimes. That should be standalone, because it's something definitely that is an issue, specifically can be very measurable. Is there something else under objectives that we should add there?
No, I just was, when I was writing top of it, to me, it's something expand police force, personnel development issues, so say, do that. But we wanna decrease crime in hotels. And we already have a police force that's a lot of their resources going to crime there. This is definitely gonna take. Police personnel. That's just-
Right, but that's not, our objective is not to hire more police personnel, it's to reduce crime, and then however we
So
have to
we're-
do that.
we're leaving-
Our
And if it is that we need more
We're
police, right,
eliminating that last
exactly.
bullet.
Yeah, I think we should.
That
Eliminate the
expand,
bullet.
but I think that that's a good bullet point to include somewhere else for all our personnel of expand personal development and educational training for all our staff, which is in line with what we're doing with the tuition reimbursement. That should be our goal, to constantly provide,
If I may
yes.
say something, in reference to that, the way I look at it, I mean, it doesn't need to be an objective, it shouldn't. I think the police chief probably knows this, but since we're trying to make a point of guiding and giving some idea to what they need to do and the objective we have, we're just talking about improving their personnel, educating their personnel, you know, making sure that they're on top of the latest or how to handle public and so forth. I'm just saying personal development and educational programs for their personnel, for the police. I want them to get better. I don't talk about, I want them to specifically get better at what they do by getting educated. I mean, sure, I can tell from the fire department that there's programs in place that educate them specifically.
And they're doing it, they just
It's fine,
doing
but
it.
we gotta make sure that this is our objective. We want you to keep doing this all the time, right? That's all.
To the chair.
Okay, but excuse me one second, but Councilman, don't you think that that is something we want to do for all of our employees?
That's fine. We put that bullet point on every single department, says we're gonna go into different departments. I'm just saying, for me, I want the police to be, you know, another level of, you know.
This is coming back to the areas, no, I'm telling you, because what Maria is stressing, which is true, and I agree with you, that should be a bullet point. This is not a policing objective here, it's a generalized public safety rate. So, for example, sample strategies again, to achieve these goals and objectives, streamline code enforcement permitting and plan review process, ensure town employees are compensated fairly and equitably, ensure town operations are adequately staffed, seek and deploy best practices in service delivery, invest in equipment and technology to enhance service delivery, streamline and standardize townwide processes and performance management. So streamline, that would go across all of the departments. But I think that, I mean, we're gonna have to look, as much as we like it or not, it will take time. You know what, and if I have to beat my head over with something else, I will sit with Tammy and do something. If we're gonna do it, let's just do it right, and then we don't have to fix the format anymore. We just keep continuing with the new format for years and years and years to come. It's not very personalized.
Okay, we've already said that we can adjust the format, but again, what you're reading to us is not something that.
But we're missing titles in the current one that we have, and we find ourselves as we go through these different sections of how we're, you know, this is good, I like this, but it doesn't fit.
But I think we
Let's,
corrected that. We're
stay-
gonna keep that to police.
This is
And
police.
stuff with
If we're
public
saying
safety
public
is gonna be
safety, it's
handled by
police.
the other department.
Tightening down the sidewalks, making sure there's not a trip hazard as part of municipal services.
Is, yes, it's maintenance and stuff, that's, you know, so, okay, so
This will be police.
let's go back to under the objectives with the, expand police personnel development and education programs. We want to leave that
Would like to,
there as part of our strategic.
our objective, for them is to continue to do it. Don't get lax or comfortable. And
That
the year
would fall
is
under a
new.
different segment, because I would
That's
expect
what
that.
it's supposed to do, but-
That's what I'm saying, I don't have a big deal, I don't think it belongs there, but you know what I'm saying, it's not
a, you know, a critical
Yeah.
something. All right, so if everyone's okay with it, we'll just leave it.
Does it feel like our objectives should address problems And I don't feel that we've identified a problem that our
Well,
police personnel are not properly
Well,
trained.
and I think
That's not about
increase,
today, you're talking about today.
but George,
Next year, the police chief comes and things start to change and then they never give.
but Councilman, let me
Next year,
ask you
we
this.
update this.
Under increased communication and positive interaction between residents and business owners, wouldn't that fall expanding police personnel development and education programs? Wouldn't that be part of that, of increasing communication and positive interaction? You know what I'm saying, is providing training for them? That might be a strategy or an initiative
I think so.
that they would provide under increasing communication and positive interaction.
Just a point of
Right, I know what you're
clarification.
saying, that you want to make sure that our
Through the chair.
police are, one second, Councilman, that what you're saying is, and it's a valid point, that you want to make sure that our police are constantly given, you know, the stresses that these
Resources.
departments are under, and stuff that they're constantly, trained and up to date with current, but I think increasing communication and positive interaction between police, residents, and business owners,
I don't see the problem, just leave it at there, be honest with you. At this
all
point.
right, let's leave it,
Just
it's
move on.
not. Interaction between police, residents, and business owners. I'm trying to see if there's a way we can include that in the previous one.
Maybe the chief will help us out when he comes back and says, look, guys, you know.
I'm chomping at the bit to get to economic development.
Through the chair.
To
Through
do
the
what?
chair.
I'm chomping at the bit to get to economic development.
Let's,
Yeah.
Councilman Vasquez.
Two things. One is, one objective doesn't help meet another objective. Standalones. It's, all of these objectives are measurable to increase or enhance public safety and security. That's what they're a function of that. So, you know, expanding police personnel development and education programs, I think is part of that enhancement. At least that's the way I see it.
Where, of the enhancement of what? Where are you saying this? See, to me, expanding police personnel development and education programs means that we don't have enough. You know, that we're not doing what we're supposed to do, we're not properly training them. And so you know, that's,
The
Like-
objective for us to
But
do
it
that,
should be for
maybe
all
as a council,
employees
will
is-
continue to give them the budget to continue to do that, because then tomorrow they say, well, we don't have the budget to
but that
continue our
would be the
expansion.
same with every department.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that's why improving across the board to all of our departments, provide increasing personal development opportunities and educational programs to all the employees, and that would include the police. I just don't see,
I was just reminding us that one objective does not enhance another objective. We could take that out, right? I'm saying that the role of the objective is to measure, have something to measure that will help enhance public safety and security. Take it out, that's fine. Let's just keep in mind that our objectives are to set measurable ways of accomplishing the objective. That's
okay, and it's measurable to say police personal development education is measurable, that they increased, they expanded, and that's, you know, send them to more courses, but again, I think that's within the departments.
I'm
Is there a need for expansion of our personnel development with the police?
I think provide opportunities for police personnel development.
Managing the chief.
Well, not for police, I'm saying for personnel development, employee, staff.
Right,
And that would go
general,
somewhere else,
Sure.
and that would go somewhere else. Let's do this, let's take a quick census of, keeping it there or not?
I keep,
We're talking, okay, Councilwoman Bravo,
Wants to get rid of the whole thing.
get rid of it.
so I changed the title at home.
I love you guys. Okay, but let's get going, we gotta,
No,
you know.
To be honest with you, I lost track. Where are we? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. My daughter is suffering from something.
Is everything okay?
Yeah, she was just. Yeah.
Expand under objectives, expand police personnel development and education items, 1, 2, 3, 4, bullet point 4.
I would remove that because I think that we should have, personal
Just remove.
development.
All you have to do is remove.
Okay, remove,
All
all right.
right.
Yeah.
It's a long
Councilman, okay, and I'm for that, but not limiting it to police. I'm for that for all personnel. We should always promote.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Roger.
Good evening, council, mayor.
So,
This is, I've been listening to this conversation and I just want to provide maybe some ideas here. When it comes to strategic planning, I appreciate that you're going through every single one of these, and I think it's a good idea to sort of understand where we were, definitely. But one thing I think we may be missing here is the council sets broad goals for the city. We want sustainability and resiliency, for example. That was one of the measures that was suggested earlier that we add because we don't currently address that. Perhaps one of the things that we need to, or what that the council can consider is maybe we need to involve departments to provide us what they would see as objectives, come back to the council with those objectives, and then work off of those and saying, okay, I see that, let's say, sustainability and resiliency. One of the objectives that Public Works has for sustainability and resiliency is increasing stormwater drainage on, arterial roads or not arterial roads, but you get what I'm saying. Specific objectives that they see day to day. And then they can also, while they're getting these objectives, establish measurables. I could not tell you what the objectives of the police department are on a day-to-day basis for the next 10 years, or what measurables might reflect on that. I think that information might be useful to consider when we develop the strategic plan. And obviously, everything that the departments come up with comes back to the council, and there's sort of checks and balances. Of course, something doesn't belong under, let's say, sustainability and resiliency. We can provide that feedback to the department, or if the department comes back with, we want to increase stormwater drainage infrastructure on certain streets, and the measurables don't aren't to your liking. Maybe that's, that's feedback, but with the department. Because like I said, I don't know. I think it's very useful for the department to say, well, here are the problems that I see. And here's how I think, or not how I think, but how the department sees that they can address it. And the council getting that information provides feedback on how they modify that, those measurable, or those objectives and measurements. It's just because I see a little bit of struggle on the council, right? Of, well, is this a 15% decreasing crime? Is that an objective?
That's what, I don't wanna put in percentage, because what are we
No, I
basing it on?
understand.
There's just no way.
But I just give that as an example.
Okay, no, and I think that's a good idea, and I think we'll do that with the strategic strategies and initiative. We're setting, and we've got to keep being broad. We've said that and ask them to come back and tell us what they can do. And perhaps, Tammy, when you work with the departments with the strategies and initiatives, I think what Roger has a good point is let the departments know if there's something that they see that needs to, most of us get complaints or we see things, or what I'm saying, that we know issues that are happening, or we see things that are happening that it's just how we do it and we'd like to see improved. But with the staff, when they go through these providing strategies and initiatives, please let them know if there is something that they feel is something that needs to be done that we're not considering and that can be done, resources or support or whatever,
I think,
to come back and let us know.
yeah, I think that some of these strategic areas are more aligned to particular departments, right? Like public safety and the police department. I think some of them, like communication or economic development, I feel like there's no department that has to tell, I feel like that's the conversation. We need to have those conversations. I think that we should give departments the liberty to suggest an objective that maybe we had not thought of.
Yes.
Again, there's a fine line where we've decided not to do this through a foreign firm and start over, and then we're going to dump this into the lap of staff. And I want to be mindful of that. I think that we've done, just my opinion, I feel like we've talked enough on public safety that if based on what we've said, we send this to the chief and to staff, that they'll be able to come up with something and maybe suggest some of their things. Whereas I think for economic development, I think we're gonna have a
Yes, no,
an
and
important
I
conversation.
think you're right with that. These are objectives, they're all important. They're all important to us, improving traffic safety. And I think Councilman Santeen had a good point with that, of just saying improve traffic safety. Whatever that needs to be across the city, that's something that we need to do, you know, whether it's speeding, the collisions, the, you know, writing stop signs, whatever, across the board and what they can do for that. So, okay, so let's do that. The key performance indicators, those were things that we'll get after we get strategies and initiatives.
Staff is all.
Right, they'll
Yes.
come up with, so Tammy, there's 3 things with these goals and objectives, I guess. One is, the strategies and initiatives to meet objectives that we're delineating. Roger's comment of anything that they feel perhaps that's not measurable, or that's not doable, or that's not, you know, something that we can realistically do. However, there are these other issues that need to be, you know, that are pressing, and we know about them as employees, you know, you may not. And to let us know issues there, and then the other thing would be the performance indicators of the metrics of how. Now let me ask you, I'm not sure where this goes, so I'm gonna throw it out now. But certain things, and I feel like it should be in our strategic plan, but we don't really have a section for that. We're very limited, we've talked about this in city council, you know, city hall, totally outgrown it, the police department is cramped into those areas. We have employees that, you know, are basically working in offices, sharing office size storage closets. And the police department keeps growing, it needs space, so, the city has in the past consistently, if you think back, every 4 or 5 years or so, you know, undertaken a new major project. And it goes back to the recreation center, then the aquatic center, and the most recent one was the senior center, which is just a showcase. We need to start planning to provide something to alleviate City Hall and police headquarters, basically. And what I think we've talked about, and there may be other options there, but what makes the most sense is to use the police parking lot that they purchase through their funds, right? And build something there where the bottom floors are for parking. We would add a parking garage in there, in addition to the police parking, say on the bottom floors, another floor or 2 of public parking, which is another issue that, you know, that keeps coming up, that we need more public parking. We need a public parking garage, and then the police headquarters on top. And perhaps what do you call it, a bridge that would connect City Hall to there. I think that's something we need to have in our strategic, you know, and I'm not sure, Roger, where we would put that, but we gotta start requesting appropriations for that. We have to go through BNA, our architects and engineers, and ask them to come up with some plans for it. But we can't keep kicking the can, because the parking garage situation is something that we know that, you know, with business and economic development task force, that they keep bringing up, you know, we need to improve the parking, and this would really solve, you know, bird sanctuary, you know, but solve 2 problems, address 2 problems, and, well, 3, because the other one, it would alleviate congestion in City Hall, so that the staff in City Hall could take over the police department area, and then the police would have their own headquarters there, and possibly we wouldn't have to do the community policing office anymore, which we're renting space across the street. So somewhere, I mean, I don't know where else to discuss that, except now we're planning long-term. This is something that should be within the next 5 years, is a
of having this project hopefully completed if we could fund it. I don't know.
Is it viable to move City Hall somewhere else and let the police and fire take over this building?
I mean, it's a great idea because maybe like they mentioned
Yes.
before, which was the country club, make a multi-purpose building there. City Hall there, and this would be. police
Okay,
station.
so let's do that. Let's put it as strategic plan, not the specifics of what we'll do. But that needs to, and I would like to, and this is, not a meeting, it's a workshop, but to get consensus from the council that we direct the NAR architects and engineers to start looking at possibilities like they did with the senior center. When they looked at the possibility of having it there and having it by the golf course, and I think having it somewhere else, I can't remember what the third and different things like this, and we gotta bite that bullet.
I think that we need to have item about that, I really put in this plan. About the specific location that you're mentioning, I was talking earlier, with folks, is that my concern is that I don't know that the footprint that exists there now is gonna sustain the needs of the police department. So unless we build 4 stories up and you got 2 stories.
So let's not go
No,
specifics, and I
I'm
agree
just
with you,
saying, but I agree with
but
you.
we need to start, so that should be in our strategic plan. Is,
The citywide-
I think it's important to consider where you're most likely to find funding opportunities. I feel like we can find funding opportunities for first responders and police and being able to do something there versus like,
A new city hall.
yeah, a new city hall for us. I
Yeah,
think
that's a
that
very good
maybe
point.
we should consider the funding source.
but we have to start with the appropriations. We're gonna have appropriations, state appropriations that we need to start requesting in early fall. And this should already be lined up as, neatly lined up as steps that this is what we'd like to do. So, and again, we'll have to do that at a council meeting is get, I'm guessing Roger, get a vote to direct BNA to start looking at the possibilities, right?
Yes.
But that should be in our strategic plan. Where would we put something like that of,
Mayor, if I may,
Yes.
perhaps when this original strategic plan was developed, an infrastructure, like a citywide infrastructure, goal wasn't necessary at the time, but now I think it is.
okay,
And I've been looking, or not looking, but I've been hearing from the council, I've been hearing from staff, I've been hearing from police, it's kind of a known element, right? That City Hall might not be, a good vehicle for providing city services. I don't know where the police department goes, I don't know where the general city hall goes, or perhaps a general infrastructure, citywide infrastructure.
So that could be
Could
what
be
Tim
added.
had brought up, a public infrastructure and making that a separate section.
So under there, we add another bullet, it could be, city governmental property. So
Critical
with
assets.
all.
Or
all
just
critical
under-
assets, correct?
Right.
Critical city assets.
And have a section of public infrastructure where,
goal is within the next 5 years is to, provide a. Plan the category, okay, and the wording, I agree with Councilman Haddad. I believe it's going to be a lot easier funding for building this station.
rather than just a new city hall. Because there's a lot of money out there for public safety, for those kinds of, things, whereas city hall, so we had, and the funding is gonna be critical, as much funding as, as we can get grants and things that are available to keep the costs down for, our residents. So should we add an extra section under strategic plan, under public infrastructure? And then, okay. And then the wording, I'm not sure, but the wording, the goal is to provide, relief for city hall and police department, of a structure of a, you know what I mean? Relief, okay. All right, so that before we leave public safety, I just wanted to get that across. And with that too, is to incorporate public parking garage facility, you know, to evaluate with VNA, is to evaluate the possibility of if we do it there, that it would, you know, would really solve a lot of issues right there. The parking garage, you know, on the first, second floor, and then the police headquarters, and alleviate room for our staff. All right, so let's move to economic development. Economic development.
So I have a thought. Sure, I hope it's in here, but when I was reading this, and then I took out the annexation. Just not that I don't think annexation would, but at this point,
I agree.
that's the economic development driver, or at least one of the three. I would put that into focus. Not saying that we forget about it. I think that what I wrote down here was that we want to increase economic development. You know that. Expand our tax base, and we wanna, you know, it says prudent commercial development. And I'm not sure where to place what I'm about to suggest, but it's that the business economic task force recommended that the city should have an economic development person to you know, to provide. We don't have a staff person. So whether that's an objective, that would be something.
I think that would have to be in the budget of something that's brought up in the budget of, you know, it's a new position, basically we're creating. a new
Right,
position.
and I think that just going back for a second. Financial and economic development task force, one of the things that they identified, they made us a number of suggestions. But central to that, it seemed to me, was that we need to have that as a goal to try to pursue as part of an economic development. Just you know, they didn't really put much in here last time around. Talked about you know, increased rent ratio to commercial tax revenue 20%, 5%. It didn't seem to be a greater strategic piece in here that would have more meat to it. And saying it's hard that task force report did recommend a series of things that was.
But didn't we already have consensus on that we would get, we would pay for consulting from a firm that would look at certain areas, and I mean, I don't know that what's missing is an economic development czar for the city. I think that what we need to do is we need to focus on areas and try to be strategic about what kind of changes. I mean, we've been talking about that, right? About land use and zoning. We have a firm that's now doing the day-to-day city planning. I think that's all, you know, part of the city planning, you know, responsibilities. And if we decide, which we've talked about doing, and having, you know, as part of a special project, giving us some guidance in terms of how to promote economic development in certain areas, I feel like that's where we're going to achieve that, or at least be working towards it.
As far as a new position, that would be in the budget, just like it would be requested as a budget position. I don't think that would go here. I think the goal would be what Councilman Head has said of this is what we want to do. And then later we decide, you know, are we going to
hire.
Do it through a consulting firm.
Right, hiring one person, and I can tell you, I know years ago, the city had hired someone, I think, for that. And if they're hired and they don't have the resources to do, it's one person. And they don't have the resources to get the information they need, we just sit them in an office and say to do this. We're not gonna get very far, so we probably need a more professional, it's just a very, and Alex, perhaps you have something to add to that as far as to what Councilman Behet was saying of having,
Consulting contractually, right? Consulting by land use and zoning experts that can tell us, that can give suggestions in terms of the context of certain areas that we will promote economic development.
As a firm, Alex David with Calvin Giordano, we do not do that work, but as we discussed previously, I mean, I think that you have good bones, it's just getting someone to pound the pavements to get the businesses in here. I don't know if you need an expert for that, but that's just my opinion. It'd be good to have someone working with the city at least part-time to help. So, but as I said, our firm doesn't do that.
Did what?
Like the business development aspect of.
Right, but so the sense I get, right, if I'm reading, I think that we had some consensus that there are some limiting factors in terms of our zoning in an area like 36th Street. And we had a bunch of suggestions, but we didn't want to do them blindly. Heidi had mentioned like, hey, all of these things, have to be done by a firm like CGA.
Right, okay, so that aspect, we will be, as we ramp up, reviewing your zoning codes in specific districts where you really kind of need help, which is 31st Street.
Right.
At 36th Street, so that's what we'll be doing in the future. We know there are issues, so could we suggest changes that may, start implementing your vision or starting to get people in there? That's what we'll have to look at, because this.
But that's something you guys can do.
Yes,
That's what we
not the
discussed.
business development part,
Right,
the
yeah,
zoning part,
right,
and land use
right.
part of.
Yeah,
Yes.
my sense is that you could try to beat the pavement and get people to come in, but there are some limiting factors that are keeping people from.
considering, even
Right.
coming to us with.
Right.
with my proposal.
And that's where I feel like we need help.
Can I ask you,
That's definitely what we're going to be doing in the future.
That's what I
Alex,
think we need.
your experience, because you tell with, you're dealing with North Bay Village, who's going through a major transition. Do you feel that this, sometimes you change all this, and yes, we're gonna do that. Priority number one, we already talked about this, 36th Street is a priority. But just that by itself, by just, changing the zoning, is that enough to, what did you see in those cities? Other cities hire somebody?
Depends, when Cutler Bay became a municipality, we worked on the zoning code, and it's a different, obviously, area, but we put in regulations to densify and intensify. This old Cutler Ridge Mall is now south, but now being torn down to allow higher densities and intensities there, because we knew the busway was across the street and all that, so that is now going through Renaissance, so to speak. And they've torn down, I think this year, they've torn down one or two parts of the mall already to build. Another example, which is a bit more dense, but South Miami, they have the Metro station, but on both sides of US 1, we implemented transit-oriented development districts, and they vary in height, but they go to 4, 5, 6, up to 8 or 9 stories. Now we just change it to 10. I mean, it's maybe a bit more dense than you'd like, but there are ways to write the regulations to start bringing in people, because if your allowance is for 2-story buildings or 3-story buildings, that's not going to cut it most likely in a major thoroughfare.
I understand, I'm just saying, we understand that part, right? Obviously, created or it's inviting.
Right.
But is that by itself successful? Or do you see this in other cities where they take it another step And it does become a positive thing by hiring somebody specifically for the economic development. That's all I'm asking. I'm not sure, not experienced.
Right. I mean, I think the regs need to be in place to allow it, and then you start hiring, you know, someone to go out and. I mean, it's shopping around. What have you all had discussions with developers? What are their wishes? I mean, just, you know, it's a starting point. What could a developer that's very interested live with? You know, if you're saying 2 stories and they want 8, well, maybe 3 or 4 is okay. I think that's where we would all, you know, have to start.
Through the chair. I think what we discussed when we had the one-on-one, talking about, on this topic, where, you know, from Curtis to the June, 2 blocks in, I was talking to Sylvia, how I think our idea is to repurpose the use of that whole area. So it could be, what we want to get away from is commercial, or commercial I think is maxed out, and we're not really benefiting from such tax revenues, especially in the bed tax situation, the commercial that our year has stressed significantly. So to repurpose a density where we would receive those tax revenues, so it'd be maybe it'll be a living, eat, work, play area 2 with a linear parking. You just repurpose the whole area. So if we change the zoning with,
You can do that. I mean, I've heard,
Right.
we don't want
I think
to
that's
be a
the whole
hotel
idea.
row or something. You want to mix it, you know, mix.
with the change in zoning, we can accomplish a repurpose in use.
CGA is gonna come forward with a proposal
Great.
on helping us move towards that. So I would suggest that we wait.
Right.
If it's something we wanna budget, we can budget it, and
So we have to do a deep dive into your code. I mean, some
Yeah.
things give me heartache and some, I know, you know, some things need to change.
So let me ask a question just to see if everybody's on the same page. It strikes me, we're in Miami, right? And we talked about this when I had my one-on-one with CGA, right? That like, well, you know, being right on 36th Street isn't the greatest for having, you know, like wide sidewalks and like, you know, a place where you're gonna be walking. But it's also, we're at the heart of it all, right? Like we're in the middle of Miami, you can get anywhere in 20 minutes. Like that's, when you look at some of the development that's happening in Brickell and in Little Havana, and those places, like there are mixed use residential development that's going up because people want to live where they can just jump and I could go to Doral, I could go south, I could go north. Like that's something that we need to leverage. And when we have, as part of our code, that if you have more than one residential unit, you can only go up like 2 floors, then that's severely limiting us. Is everybody on the same page with that? Because that can be part of like our objectives, right? Is that we want to encourage more mixed use and, you know, residential and like a lot. That's coveted. Being able to live on 36th Street and being able to jump on the highway and get anywhere in the county in 20 minutes, I think is something that is an asset that we have that right now we're currently not leveraging. And then I think that kind of leads to what we're at, right? Which is just a hotel row and we don't have, like, I feel like that's something that we need to, as a council, consider and perhaps embrace so that we kind of have a vision, a direction for where, you know, I feel, and that's why, you know, they're gonna develop a proposal to think about kind of like some ideas for, you know, some land use and zoning ideas that could kind of ameliorate that problem that we have, that we don't, developers are like you were saying, they're not even considering our area because like do 2 stories and like it's not worth their while. And again, I'll mention what I mentioned in the previous meeting, that for a long time, somebody who's lived here for 50 years, right? Like there were no density. We don't want density. We don't want to work out our schools. We don't want the traffic. We don't want the density. And so then what we have is we have transient people that are in hotels like this. We are dealing with the results of a sentiment that at the time sounded right? Well, we don't want to increase our density. We're a small town. But at this point, if our goal is to diversify our tax base and kind of promote economic development, I feel like we gotta really reassess, you know, that if this is what we want, if it's what we want, then I feel like that should guide all our decisions.
I agree with you totally, and I think our location, and I've said this always, for the life of me, I do not understand why we're not more desirable, because we have the best location by far in Dade County. I don't care what anyone says, the best, the best, the best. And we've got to somehow get that across. And I think with the new, development that's going on, the Realtors headquarters in that corner, and then the Oliva, facility, you know, sometimes all it is a domino effect. It takes, you know, one little business there that others start looking, and I gave the example of, you know, Ball and Chain on 8th Street. That little bar, just, when they were building that there, I kept going, who in the world is gonna come here after, and now you go there and it's the liveliest spot, right? But it's like, it took one,
Right.
and maybe the ones that are there or something else. So you're right, and we can't sell ourselves short either, because we know we have an asset. Either if other people haven't recognized it, we know that it's an amazing asset. It really is the best location in all Dade County, across the street from Miami International Airport, for goodness sakes.
Right.
So, you know, no matter, even if there's nobody's reaching out, you know, knocking down doors to reach us, we gotta keep that in mind in future councils too, that we've really got a gem, you know, and we can't sell our communities short. But we have to learn how to leverage it. So I would say under the goal here where it says strengthen and diversify the tax base, to add something along and increase the business, the diversity of businesses, because if you think back to what the, you know, councils, and I don't know how long ago this was, but they decided to pursue having hotels all along 36th Street. And it was a good idea. I mean, we face the airport, it makes sense to have hotels there. The only thing, and they accomplished that, but there wasn't, you know, okay, after we get there, you know, where or what, how to augment that. You know, it's just kind of the hotels and that was it. And really what needed to be done, or at least what needs to be done now, is to kind of fill in the blanks.
To generate
you know,
business
so-
from hotels to downtown.
Yes,
You know,
and
that's.
But the
Yes.
public
Yeah,
service-
so I think that's fine as a goal. I think one objective is the Northwest 36 corridor with its commercial use. Let's not forget about our central business district, you know, as a B, and others, but because they're different, right? You've got a number of spaces that are coming online. One Curtis Parkway, which is still not fully rented and so forth. You've got the theater area, and then that building on the right-hand side, Quincyana, which is kind of there. So, you know, but thinking about that, and Westwood, which is where we have another, as you said, good bones.
Right.
But really require some thinking through. So the recommendations this outfit can do is one part of this, right? Which is the codes and the other things that, especially on just 36th Street. But you need something that someone that pulls it together, and that could be a consultant, it could be someone else. But we need someone thinking every day, bounding the pavement, who's in this block, who's there, you know, everything.
But it's almost like a 3 or 4 party, you know, because
That's what I'm
what's the airport's doing on the north side? VIP terminal and whatever, I don't know what other projects they may be wanting to do on
Yes.
this side. You have FDOT, the roadway is an issue for me. I mean, it's the speedway. And then the city. What about VG? You know, I mean,
Yes.
it's a whole, you know, it's almost like a 4-party deal to try to put some stuff together.
so going to this with our economic development, I think the paragraph at the top, where it says prudent commercial development along with targeted annexation, we're really talking not just commercial development, but
Any
prudent development. So I think
Period.
we can take that commercial and just say prudent development, right? Or I don't know about the word prudent, but something.
You don't want to. What is it,
Right.
unprudent or
No,
imprudent?
what would you say?
Let's say commercial and mixed use development.
Through the chair, it's Roger, the hotels fall under the commercial, correct?
I believe so.
Yeah.
36. Well, that's a kind of a mixed, you know, the 36 corridor is kind of more mixed use, I think. I don't know if that's the right wording, but
Okay, I think, I don't know if I'm off topic here. I'll talk to Robert later about that.
So let's say something word development and
Yeah, we're
not prudent, but some other. Prudent, or, strategic. I think this is strategic. plan. We can later, strategic or something development along, now targeted annexation, Councilman Vasquez, I don't know that we want to take it out because I think that we've said that that's our goal. It's still our goal, whether Commissioner Cabrera wants to pursue it for us right now or not, that's still our goal, you know, and he said, he made the commitment to us that he would not let another city do that. I don't think we want to back off from that.
I'm not saying we do, I'm saying you just said goal. And if it's a goal, it has to be that here, not in the paragraph.
Okay,
Follow what I'm saying?
okay,
I
okay,
mean, that because I'm not saying not to.
okay.
I was being a little.
But I get economic development, one is development, but also pursuing annexation. Something to pursue because we may, and there may be other areas down the road that, you know, that we pursue to annex. So I'd like to leave that in as economic development because that would, commercial annexation would help our economic
I'm
development.
thinking something like this, it will strengthen and diversify the tax base through strategic development and or annexation. I don't know.
That's-
Yeah,
That's great.
Yeah.
Come on. That's great.
Well, no, but that's why.
I think that covers everything you're.
Generalizing
Right.
the-
Yes, it's interesting,
That's all.
yes. But let's leave that in there and let's just leave it as development, not commercial development, but all development, because we're open to
Right, I mean,
considering
that's like
whatever is
strategic development, whatever you think is the best
helps
strategy.
our community without, you know, provides the best for our community, that, you know, all goals of reducing tax base, providing the diversity, reducing crime, encouraging more use of those areas and, you know, and also development along 36th Street is a good area to encourage for development, whereas, you know, throughout the city and other areas, we certainly don't want to impact our residential.
We should add, on that to say, through careful planning, appropriate growth, and community involvement. We're gonna do this one, because so people know that we're,
Is there another word?
I would go under the communication.
this.
Appropriate planning.
I would go under communication.
Economic development. Okay, so under the goal, then strengthen and diversify the tax base and
Through strategic
Increase.
development.
through
I'm thinking of through strategic development and or annexation.
strategic development.
Development and or annexation, it's wide, wide open.
It's kind of saying that we're not gonna just throw our eggs on that again. We're gonna move on, and if you're there, you're probably gonna come back to us because we did a great job of the rest of our economic development. Believe me, if I would. If I will.
That,
Once we get this thing straightened out,
huh?
don't be
Okay,
surprised they
yes, yeah.
start
Oh,
seeing us a little different.
no,
So
I'm so
I agree,
convinced
it should
that
be more,
it's
not like, we're gonna hear go in
through
for a main goal.
strategic development or
He said and or.
And
And or, that's why I said and or, that's why I know.
Yes.
Okay, that's good,
Okay.
because it's not like they're being focused.
Okay, so then the objective, again, we have percentages there, which I don't have anything to base on, so increase current ratio of commercial tax revenue to total tax revenue.
Can I suggest an objective?
Sure,
Could I put in there something to the effect of develop a plan for addressing parking? I think that that's something that is coming. And I know we're already working on it, but I keep telling people that like parking problem is not a pejorative term, right? If we have a parking problem, that means that we've been successful. And we have a bunch of people eating at our restaurants and like we got one. I welcome a parking problem, but I feel like we need to be looking ahead and thinking about what to do. And I know we're doing a parking study, and I think that that should be an objective of ours, is that we develop, you know, a plan for addressing parking and being kind of proactive. Because if we don't, that will counteract, you know, what we're trying to promote in terms of revitalizing these areas.
Okay, so under, you think that that should be under objective?
I think that an objective should be to develop a comprehensive plan for parking in our business areas, particularly like our central business district.
Wouldn't that be part of the plan for development, would be, the parking would be included in the?
Well, I mean, I'm gonna take a stab, not a parking expert, but is there a perceived parking problem or is there a real parking?
Depends on who you ask.
Right, and perceived as you can't park in front of Starbucks and walk right in the door. So
It is
is it a
very
real one where you can't park
depending on.
park within 3 blocks of?
Alex, we hired other professionals again to give us that answer.
But we,
Parking studies in the box.
Study and just to give a quick background, it is something that it depends. Everyone wants to park in front of the post office. There's only one car that can park directly in front of the post office, no matter how many other parking spaces are all over it, it's one. And there are times of the day where there's more, you have to walk a little further than to be able to park where you are. Depending on the studies that you see, that's very good for, the foot traffic is very good for our type of cities because, our shops and restaurants and all need that, or need that kind of attention. But, you stroll past them, realize, oh, there's this shop here. But everyone does want to park right in front nearby. The businesses themselves would like their customers to be able to park right near their business because that makes it more likely that they'll stop by if they see, I gotta park, a block away, they might just continue and not bother. So, there's both sides of the coin here, but we are doing a parking study to find out, where a parking garage has been talked about a lot of time, and I think a parking garage is a really good idea, except like I tell people, that's not gonna park you right in front of the post office. You're gonna have to walk several blocks to get to the parking garage.
So South Miami, I'll go back to them. They actually have a public-private partnership on, I think it's 73rd, it's a block or two south of Sunset. There was a public-private partnership and a parking garage was built with retail on the bottom, restaurants and a couple other things. It was pretty darn successful, so the city bought the structure, maybe a year and a half ago. So it's just heavily used, so.
The thing is, we've got that apartment building at One Curtis Parkway is gonna be online soon, and that's gonna have a lot of residents. And then the retail and restaurants underneath are going to you have a restaurant on a Saturday night, you got 20 employees, where are they gonna park, right? So you've got patrons, you've got employees, you've got residents, there's gonna be overnight parking. I feel like, knock on wood, we're gonna have a parking problem, right? Whether you agree or disagree at this moment, it's coming, and I feel like our strategic plan should proactively try to address that, or at least put as a goal that we're gonna develop a plan for addressing parking.
And I asked that question at some point, because I'm not familiar, I know the structure, but is there public parking in the parking garage? What I mean by that, not resident parking,
It's open.
not retail parking.
It's open.
This little line.
The parking garage didn't have enough spaces in the garage for what was calculated for the residents. But it is open, so retail, employees at restaurants, residents, there may be overnight parking outside, we're gonna have to, when we do this parking study, we're gonna have to really kind of think globally. And there were a bunch of suggestions that we haven't even, cracked the seal on them, that were done by the Economic Development Task Force, because we're kind of waiting to look at parking. I feel like parking is a big thing in terms of economic development. It's gotta be something that we need to be.
Looking for alternatives, instead of we're gonna order.
So let's do this. This would be under objectives,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
Okay, so
yes,
let's do the objectives. And that way, the goal is to strengthen and diversify the tax base.
Yes,
And through, I want to say strengthen and diversify the tax base and businesses, not just all hotels, that we have.
What I mean by, I said, let's
Is
let it
that
blind,
through
let it
diversity-
loose.
Diverse,
You don't want just business, you want residential tax base, maybe.
right, so
mixed-use
through
tax base, so.
development and or annexation, and that covers,
every-
okay. All right.
Yeah,
Okay, so then the objectives, all right, let's go to the objectives. There's only one here, increase current, we'll take out percentages, since we don't have anything to base it on. Increase current ratio of commercial tax revenue to total tax revenue. That helps our residents with,
It's quick and simple.
right, and it helps our residents in lowering the millage rate. So that should be a goal, you know, to lower our millage rate for our residents.
Right, and it goes back to the goal, the objective, you clean it up, it goes back to the goal. And it's
Okay.
through strategic development or annexation.
All right,
Increase the
we'll
tax
just
to
leave
it.
out the percentages or by the date, but that's just an objective, is to increase. Now, do we want to put in there under the objective, increase the current ratio of commercial tax revenue to total tax revenue in order to lower the millage?
Because the chair, I have a little conflict with that, because we're trying to get away from the commercial. Because the hotels fall within that bed tax revenue that we're not getting 100%. And if we open up more commercial, we're not gonna be able to have the tax revenue through the projected residential and retail that we're looking to get revenue from, which is huge. So I don't know if we wanna like continue to increase commercial based tax revenue. Or if we're trying to open this up for multiple.
And the bed tax is only a percentage off, all the money goes together.
I don't wanna expand.
I know, but we get a lot of taxes from the hotels.
I think you gotta leave the market forces to a certain extent, because at the times, that's why zoning is important, right? But one of the biggest components there is gonna still be the vote, which is a public vote, which is the multifamily component. That's part of commercial, so we're gonna address that part. It's a big, huge project.
If it's over, what, 8 units, 6 units, as opposed to commercial.
It's a mixed use project with residential and retail, that's a commercial project.
Mixed uses, you know, think it could be office, residential, commercial, you know, whatever.
It's a commercial project, is in other words.
Basically, I think that's how it's.
I think we should put the terms mixed use instead of commercial.
Increase the current ratio of mixed use tax revenue.
I don't know, I'm just trying to get a,
We could come up with another word besides commercial, because that's too limiting.
yes,
Okay,
So-
all right,
And
Yes.
everything else except for residential, right? That's what you're kind of saying. right?
yes.
right.
And the purpose is to, you know, well, for a whole bunch of purposes, but one of them is to help lower the millage rate for residents.
And in the mixed use, we can also have residential, if we want to increase the density of residential. then-
Right.
Okay, and I guess we don't have to put that as an objective to lower our millage rate, because that's always a given that we're always trying to lower the millage rate, okay. Okay, so the next objective, under that,
Develop a comprehensive plan for addressing parking in the business areas.
is everyone in agreement with that?
Yes. The chair,
Yes.
in reference to also, I think it's a way of economic development to our community is highlighting, rebranding our community as, you know, historic, you know, Glen Curtis, Aviation City. I mean,
Yes. Now would
we are
that
not
be,
taking advantage of
no, I
something.
agree,
It's ridiculous.
Okay,
We could.
so
So rebranding it is a way to
would that be an
develop our
objective?
economic. That's why I do it.
Would that be an objective, a goal?
I mean, it's kind of,
Economic
it's
development.
kind of a goal, but how are you,
Together
Maybe.
with. What was it? What was
that
the
improves everything. Obviously, you get visitors to our town. They're gonna make sure that all these businesses that we love to have can't just live off of Miami Springs. Let's not kid ourselves. So we're actually helping them develop and sustain, you know. So,
And is
just
that
saying-
an objective that we want to, and I don't know, rebrand
How do we-
our whole city?
You know, what you're missing, and I'm gonna jump back, I don't like to do this, but your vision doesn't speak anything to your history. There's nothing in here which I think is lacking. Okay, I don't-
Yeah, they should be highlighted.
There's nothing in the vision that talks about your historic nature, your architecture, whatever, you know, so. I put something in front too.
Read it, you want to read it?
No, I didn't, I'm just
Oh,
saying.
No, but
I
we
don't
did
have
talk
anything,
about
just-
that a little while ago, I mean, earlier of our,
Yeah, I have a note to say, take opportunities to keep in line with the historic nature or the aviation,
Right.
field.
But under the vision,
Yeah, I have it in my notes as
Okay.
discussed.
I think that's one of the visions that's,
Okay, but are you saying under economic development that that should be there, or that's already?
I guess we go back to.
Is-
That's another
Why
place, should be both
economic
places.
development
But I think,
versus is good builders.
well, I think what you're saying is actually, if it's under the objective, we should have something promoting our city, not necessarily rebranding it, but promoting our city as a the word's haven, I don't want to use the word haven, but you know what I'm saying, is an ideal location as the premier location within Miami-Dade County.
premier
or
but planned also, this is a.
Premier and planned community with location, adjacent to Miami International Airport, all major roadways.
I think that's a broader point. I don't,
But just, I think it should be an objective is to promote, identify, create,
the economic opportunities in our city. I think the developers are looking for places where they can open up their businesses, where they can develop, that will be profitable for them. And that people will want to come to. I don't know.
I think that.
no, but increase in, I have heard, and this is recently at some of the League of City conferences that I've been going to, is that with developers, and they've said this, there is a renewed interest in placemaking for not creating the suburbs, beautiful plan, and there was always going to be that. But, in areas that have a historical backing, but the location have all this, well, it's what's been happening in all these cities, areas that, everyone had left and now they're revitalized and they're seeing, because they have an ideal location, they have that historical component, they have all these things. So I'm saying within economic development, perhaps we should have one of our objectives is to somehow highlight that, which is what Councilman, Vice Mayor Santin, you're alluding to, is a statement here of
I think, if you're talking about tourism.
be identified
we see
as
survive
a,
off of tourism, but so as to have just an added element to
So
our
perhaps
economic
we-
development, increasing visitors to our town.
perhaps be recognized as a premier
I don't know, one restaurant owner is gonna want more people to come to their restaurant.
planned, I don't know, let's give some wording there,
Just,
planned community with historical and location, including in that.
I'm about as big of a Glenn Curtis geek as you will find. I went to visit the museum in Hammondsport where he was born. I don't feel like anybody's gonna come to a restaurant because Glenn Curtis founded this city. I appreciate our history and I think that we need to promote it, but when it comes to economic development, it's about, is it nice to walk? Is it, or do you have restaurants? Is there adequate parking? Like, it's just a place where I could live and still be able to
It's
kind of
a
shop.
location, But that comes
Yeah.
back to our location.
Yeah, no,
Premier
the
location.
location I feel is our biggest leverage point.
So, but
So
And I agree. our location is,
I feel like
there's
our
nothing to
biggest
compete
selling
with that.
So people don't come to museums, they
But-
come to take pictures with statues,
Well-
they don't take a picture with a lot of the history stuff.
Is that what we're missing?
Huh?
Look, I don't-
A museum and or a mansion, I mean, that's.
I'm not trying.
No one
to
knows
do anything.
we're here. City, nobody even knows us.
no, but I think just be recognized, we can put something on there as be recognized as a, and I keep using the word premier because I can't think of anything, my mind is mush, but, as a ideal, top location in Miami-Dade County for,
use your brand, use your,
At the heart of it all.
in the heart of.
It all,
the heart of
it all, ideal,
Centrally located, friend.
Miami International Airport and, immediate connection to,
Well, but
and connection
unless you're in a
to
hotel.
all major expressways and major transportation and with a historical component.
Well,
And perhaps the historical component can be.
Sure,
Sure, located near it,
the
near,
end.
near the airport and other.
Tammy,
locations.
you'll have to figure that out. I'm sorry. We're throwing all this stuff for Tammy.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine.
I'm recording the
Saying,
meeting.
sitting with these notes and going.
Since our economic developments are.
So
Yes.
I have a question, what, I don't know if any of you know, what the third strategy, what support of Miami have to do with Miami Springs? Just pointing that out, I just, that was kind of an odd one to
Yes.
me.
Yeah, but that's something the staff is gonna come to us with in terms of strategies. We're staying at the goal and objective of that.
I do think Miami International Airport, that is something we need to leverage of doing more business with, figuring out,
Do you have meetings with them, the
No.
director, I mean, is there any, because, you know, you want to reach out to
We
them?
don't go to visitors bureaus, we
No.
don't go to conventions.
Commissioner
Shows a lot of stuff.
Sosa was going to arrange something with us, with me, to speak, and then they had those changes with their director, and,
Right.
you know, it was like after, and, that was, you know, within the past 2 years or so, they had the new
Was it
mayor,
that
county mayor, they
OTA?
changed
I think
the
that's
director, and there were
OTA
several
director.
changes, so we were waiting, but we'll revisit that for
Yeah, I
sure.
mean, because I know there's some plans on,
Yes.
you know, besides the VIP terminal, they wanna do some other stuff over here. This side, so.
And actually, their former director, Mr. Sola, was my boss, the county
The
for years. It was
property-
wonderful. And then, you know,
No, he was at property appraiser or water and sewer. He was at
water and sewer, then went to aviation.
Aviation.
But before that, was at ISD.
And he was in
Oh, I see,
elections
that's
too.
what-
Yeah, right.
Election, okay.
So when he was, and then got moved and there was, you know, so we'll see. We'll pursue that again, definitely. We have
I think
to
it's a
reach
good,
out to them.
you know, a strategy to. work with.
Okay, so under the strategies and initiatives, we'll leave that for Tammy, but I just don't know what you're going to do so much with that, because those are really things that we need to come up with, you know? I mean, what is Tammy gonna come back to us with that?
Come up with some ideas. we can
They'll
send you
come
a
up
link.
with something.
All right.
They are
We
going
do
to
have-
municipal services.
I know, I was gonna call
We'll
the
be here
meeting.
till 2.
Yes, all right, let's go.
Municipal
All right,
services.
all right, municipal services.
Yes.
Thank you, Alex.
You mean to stop the meeting here?
Yeah.
I need to go there.
Okay, do y'all, you're saying, well,
Began to,
let's.
I'm just saying.
I do-
Municipal services is very good.
Recommendations, and can I at least start to present the draft to you,
Yes,
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 including municipal
sure.
Yes,
services,
sure.
all of that, and then
yes, I think we agreed that, the
Yes.
financial management probably didn't pretty much stay as is, so it's just communication.
and communication.
And communication, when you look at that, we've done so much since then, you know, I mean, we've been moving around on so much, so there's so much, which there's always room for even more. But,
So there's no need.
all right, so I do want to mention one thing while we're all together, not related to this. My mind is trying to think, it's related to the, interim, to the city manager position. That if we're all in agreement, Roger is preparing the contract, and I'll let Roger, so that when we decide on the manager, you know, whoever that is, that we're not waiting then to start preparing the contract, that we already have a contract ready.
So Mayor, our office has already begun that drafting process. Obviously, we cannot exactly have a contract ready.
Sure.
But as I mentioned at the last council meeting, I believe, the process will generally follow. We get interviews of the candidates. Council will obviously take a break, select at the next meeting who they want to move forward with the city manager. At that point, when there's a selection of the city manager, the council will pick among themselves, typically it's the mayor, who will negotiate the contract terms and specific portions with that candidate who is selected. Obviously, legal will assist in whoever is in charge of that negotiation process. To that process, as far as drafting the contract, our firm has already begun, establishing that contract. In a similar way as the interim city attorney, or sorry, interim city manager contract, we had already begun before that process had already, before we had selected.
Besides the contractual elements of it, what else is involved in negotiating the contract? Is that something that's done through human resources? Is that something that's done typically through the city attorney?
You're working with our human resources director.
We,
On that.
of course, the city attorney's office represents the city as a whole, and obviously I will be working with the mayor or one of the council members that's selected to negotiate, but of course, we will be depending on city staff if necessary. So HR, of course, I can see them being involved.
Mayor, I'm okay with you doing that. For whatever's needed from us, I'm okay with you doing the negotiating along with the city attorney and whatever has to happen. I'm glad that you brought that up, because if we can,
I don't
anything
want
we can do to expedite the process would help.
Select someone and then we're like, okay, now we need to start preparing the contract week or two. So, I had spoken to Roger and to Bill and said, what do we need to do so that when we select someone, we can move as quickly as possible.
So for the record, I'm the mayor in person to negotiate. Yeah,
Okay, is that
when they
something
selected.
we need a vote on?
So this is a workshop.
Oh,
When we
okay.
make the selection, I think that's the time.
Okay. But if, I guess, Roger, did you want to say anything to the council as far as if input or anything on the?
So what I will say is obviously whoever is selected to negotiate that contract, the agreement does come back to the council for a final approval. So we select, negotiate during that period, and then the contract will come back for approval by the entire council.
Or the other two agreements that negotiate the contract? This is after we select, but I just want to make sure we're not wasting time later or having to have another meeting to,
I just,
We're good at-
on the contract, so you guys will put together a preliminary contract and then fill in the blanks with the specifics, because the preliminary is the bulk of the contract, which is what really takes time, right? If the council could know what those terms are going to be, the terms that are going to be negotiated, just so we have a general understanding, so that when mayor takes, the lead on that, when when that contract is presented, if we have any ideas on, or if we have any change requests, we already know what terms we're talking about. Or if we can give if there's something that just stands out that, 5 is better than 1, I'm not saying, but if I just see something like, hey, Roger, can you look into, and then maybe you may wanna
I think we
relate that,
but
I-
what I would
Mayor,
suggest
yeah.
Nicole, is, what I did is I reached out to Bill, Roger, just to ask about the whole process, to make sure that,
But yes, please, Mayor.
so go ahead, okay,
Please.
but go ahead, and I'm just gonna say to any council members, if you have any questions regarding the contract, and I'll, reach out to Bill and Roger and just,
Correct.
so we can fill you in, but this way, hopefully, to your point, Councilor Vice Mayor, that, as soon as we select someone, we can move along quickly.
Yeah, absolutely, Mayor. All of you can reach out to our office and help guide you in terms of visioning the process here.
All right, so we'll leave,
That was gonna be my question. Is that something that I should plan for?
Do you
In
know
August?
August?
I know what is, I know, I'm just trying to get a feel for.
So
I-
we're already
Coming
committed
back in
to a
August.
meeting every week.
let's let
It's every
Tammy,
Monday.
do this, the only thing we can add it on is, and those budget workshops are really, is added on at after a budget workshop, they take up a lot of time too, so.
Share the draft
You get, you share the draft.
beforehand,
Yeah.
and then you guys give me your input, and then we can always, add anything throughout this, you can email me back. And we can continue to add. It's gonna be a living, breathing document anyway.
Yes? All right, guys, thank you so
Thank you so much,
much.
Leah.
This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Bye.